Chapter 437. Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang thought that Lin Feng had made a slip of the tongue, but they did not know that Lin Feng was laughing unscrupulously in his heart. The yin and yang life and death formation was extremely complicated. Lin Feng was able to control it immediately because it was an item issued directly by the system, just like the doppelganger of the war god. Otherwise, it would not be easy for the primordial spirit big shots from the reincarnation sect and the hell path to completely understand every change in the formation. Even though they had only intercepted a small part of it, it was still very difficult for Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang to deduce it. After a while, Lin Feng used the excuse that the time limit was up and stopped the deduction. Then, he simply tested the two of them. Li Yuanfang's face obviously showed that he had not had enough, but his eyes were full of gratitude when he looked at Lin Feng. He lowered his head and muttered to himself, thoughts flying in his mind. Seeing him like this, Lin Feng smiled in his heart, saying, "Regarding the choice of your future path, you don't have to rush to a conclusion yet. Go back and think about it carefully. You still need some time to recover from your injuries. Now, rest in peace and organize your thoughts." Li Yuanfang nodded seriously and said, "Yes, thank you, senior." Looking at his back, Lin Feng laughed in his heart and said, "You have to pay attention to the heat. If the fire is too strong, it will burn easily. Simmering it slowly is the right thing to do." After Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang left, Lin Feng turned his attention to the other side. He turned his palm over, and a piece of red wood appeared in his hand. It was about a foot long, and there was a faint flame flickering in the center of the wood. It was as if a living creature was breathing. The light and darkness were constantly intertwining. When the wood came into contact with Lin Feng's skin, Lin Feng could clearly feel a warmth. It was hot, but not painful, and there was a sense of nobility and elegance. The flame in the center seemed like a heartbeat. It seemed inconspicuous, but when Lin Feng used his magic power to enter it, he could immediately feel a majestic and exuberant life force, like an inextinguishable flame. However, the flame did not seem aggressive. Instead, it had the power to warm the world. However, it was noble and arrogant, faintly repelling people from thousands of miles away. The lines on the surface of the wood twisted and spiraled, and vaguely outlined the figure of a phoenix, spreading its wings and letting out a long cry. Who would have thought that I would obtain a piece of the divine parasol tree? Lin Feng clicked his tongue in admiration. As soon as his iron tree clone came into contact with this piece of divine wood, he immediately sensed it, faintly feeling that this item was extraordinary. The sorrow iron tree and the divine parasol tree were the four great spiritual trees in the world, and they were spiritual plants that were created by heaven and earth. Lin Feng looked carefully and was slowly amazed. It doesn't seem like an ordinary divine parasol tree. It feels like a wudong tree heart. Although it was only a piece of broken wood, the life force, conception, and exuberant life force contained in it far surpassed that of ordinary divine parasol trees. Lin Feng had a magic treasure embryo on hand. It was called the Fate Sealing Stone. After Lin Feng ascends to the primordial spirit stage, with it as the core, there was a high chance that he could refine a powerful magic treasure. Nonetheless, the life-sealing rock paled in comparison to the wutong tree heart at the moment. The life force contained in both of them was equally exuberant, but the wutong tree heart was superior. At the same time, Lin Feng could vaguely sense that this was only the tip of the iceberg of the wutong tree heart's power, and there were many hidden things that he had yet to discover. This had nothing to do with cultivation base. If he wanted to find out, he would probably need other wudong trees or the phoenix's bloodline. Lin Feng thought, the phoenix that entered the secret treasure with the Kuan Peng is probably targeting the wutong tree heart. The phoenix cries on high hill. The wudong grows on a morning sun. There was a saying in ancient times that planting a wudong attracts phoenixes. The phoenixes were arrogant and would not perch on anything other than a wudong. As far as Lin Feng knew, the phoenixes were unique in the demon realm and infinite mainland. They never got involved in other people's disputes. Due to their powerful abilities, other people were unwilling to provoke them. Apart from the Phoenix's own powerhouses, there were many powerful divine parasol trees that had lived for tens of thousands of years in the Phoenix's habitat. They were almost as powerful as the Phoenixes themselves. The Phoenixes and divine parasol trees were inseparable. When they worked together, even a great demon like the Enchantress would not easily offend them. Just like that, the Phoenixes and divine parasol trees pursued an isolated island policy. They were almost independent of infinite mainland. Although they were not completely isolated, they rarely interacted with the outside world. The Kuan-Peng demon race was one of the few demon races that had always interacted with the Phoenixes. Lin Feng weighed the Wutong tree heart in his hand and pondered, if I don't handle it well, it might be a disaster. But if I handle it well, it might have an unexpected effect. It's a pity that I have too little information at hand, so it's hard to make a judgment. It'll be great if I have more information. When the ancient Kuan-Peng's body was decomposed, the demonic phoenix Black Jade, which had entered the secret treasure with the black-feathered Kuan-Peng, was left in the black-feathered Kuan-Peng's body, whereas the Wutong tree heart was left with Lin Feng. Shaking his head, Lin Feng temporarily put the matter aside. He raised his head and looked towards the empty space outside of Jade Capital Mountain. There was a faint purple gas twisting in the space, blocking off two thin rays of light. Those rays of light were not real light, but were formed from spiritual sense and mana. Lin Feng looked down and saw that the two rays of light were emitted from the cave abode where Jie and his wife were. TSK, the enemy forces are still trying to kill me. Lin Feng shook his head and laughed, but it's useless. I'd better think about how to deal with the Qiongqi demon race. Who knows if the Nine Glory Sky collapsing formation in those big demons' hands can be used again. If I underestimate the enemy, I'll be badly hurt. Under the starry sky, a green-clothed lady was strolling alone in the field. She seemed to be one with heaven and earth. When she walked, it was as if she was not the one moving, but the surrounding heaven and earth were moving together. The green-clothed lady suddenly stopped and raised her hand to draw a circle of light in the air in front of her. The image in the circle of light changed, and a young man's figure could be vaguely seen standing there. However, it was not clear as if he was a phantom. Eldest senior brother? The green-clothed lady was naturally Yan Mingwei, and the person she called eldest senior brother was the most outstanding descendant of her generation in Taishu Temple, the current world wayfarer of Taoism, Lin Daoan. Lin Daoan said, Junior Sister Yin, I'll be going to Infinite Mainland soon, and I can't be distracted. I'll have to trouble you to deal with the Qiongqi demon race. His voice was very calm and ordinary. It was not hoarse and low, loud and clear, not ear-piercing and not pleasant to the ear. His biggest characteristic was that he had nothing special. Ordinary would be the best adjective to describe him. However, this kind of ordinariness vaguely contained a kind of profound principle that all things return to the truth, and the great Tao was the simplest. The Qiongqi demon race has a total of 3 big demons who have cultivated the indestructible demon soul. Among them, the great sage Qiongqi is at the 2nd level of the indestructible demon soul, and is one of the 10 sages of the demon race. The Qiongqi demon race also has its own powerful magical powers. Lin Daoan said, however, the most important thing is the 9 Glory Sky collapsing array. The array formation was broken on the North Wind Sea, but the array diagram was intact and was taken away by Qiongqi. Based on the information we received, Qiongqi is obviously gathering the treasures for the array formation again. However, we can't tell if it has gathered all the treasures. Lin Daoan said silently, if I'm not wrong, the demon race in Infinite Mainland will also covet the array diagram and keep searching for the whereabouts of the Qiongqi demon race. Junior Sister Yin, please be careful. Killing Qiongqi demon race is secondary. The key is the array diagram of the 9 Glory Sky collapsing array. This array formation is too much of a threat to the divine land in the hands of the demon race. Don't worry, eldest senior brother, I'll be careful. Yin Mingyue asked curiously. Eldest senior brother, is it because of the Kuan Peng treasure that you want to go to Infinite Mainland personally? Lin Daoan answered, it's indeed because of the Kuan Peng treasure, but it's not because of the Kuan Peng demon race, but because of the phoenix race. Yin Mingyue's eyes flickered. The news is that a phoenix entered the treasure with Kuan Peng. If it's just to break the ice with pure yang true fire, the phoenix can stay outside. Eldest senior brother, are you suspecting that the phoenix race is involved? Yes, that's right, Lin Daoan said calmly. That's why I can't use a clone. I need to go in person this time. Yin Mingyue nodded and asked again, has White Light already gone to Yujing Mountain in Xianmen Tianzong? Lin Daoan said, that's right. He also saw the Black Dragon Mystic Rock and is temporarily staying on Yujing Mountain. However, the restriction on Yujing Mountain seems to be quite strong. The dermic power waves of the Hollow Heart linking rings can't be transmitted out, so we can't use it to locate him. White Light can send out dermic power sound transmission. I think it can only be done with the tacit consent of the Master of Xianmen. However, when the dermic power sound transmission is done, the Hollow Heart linking rings dermic power waves are still isolated. Yin Mingyue shrugged and said indifferently, that's a pity. Lin Daohan's tone was as calm as before, without the slightest change. It's just a test. He changed the topic and continued to ask, there's one thing that I need to confirm with junior sister Yin. Yin Mingyue said, eldest senior brother, please speak frankly. Lin Daohan asked silently. In the past, I got the news from Liu Yang, the sword cultivator of Mount Shu Sword Sect. The true cultivation of a master of Xianmen Tianzong doesn't seem to be high. Yes, there's indeed such a saying. Junior brother Chen Gang once went to Kunlun Mountain to look for him. At that time, Xianmen Tianzong had not yet established a sect, Yin Mingyue replied, but now it seems that it's not enough to believe. She glanced at the light shadow. Could it be that eldest senior brother has a new idea? Lin Daohan's voice was still calm. There are many doubtful points, but it's still to be determined. He spoke unhurriedly. The problem is that no one has really forced the master of Xianmen Tianzong into a desperate situation, so I still have doubts in my heart and can't make a final judgment. Yin Mingyue's eyes flashed with an incomprehensible look. Does eldest senior brother want to speed up the collision between him and Mount Shu Sword Sect? Chapter 438. Yin Mingyue asked, does eldest senior brother want to use the pressure of Mount Tai to force the master of the Xianmen sect to reveal himself? Silently, Lin Daohan said, now is not the time. Whether it is Taishu Temple or myself, we all hope that his Xianmen Tianzong can play a role in keeping the Shushan Sword Sect in check. If he is strong, we can only wish for it. If he is weak, we can help him. Of course, the prerequisite is that he has enough potential and ability. At present, although it is blurry, we could draw a rough outline. As Lin Daohan spoke, a spot of light appeared in the air in front of Yin Mingyue. Then it kept moving. Wherever the spot of light passed, it left a clear mark that did not dissipate for a long time. The movement of the spot of light formed a ray of light. The ray of light outlined a person's appearance in a few strokes. It seems ostentatious, but in fact, he plans before he acts. He will take into account the reactions of all sides. He knows when to advance and when to retreat, and he will not be insatiable. Silently, Lin Daohan said, but there will often be conflicts. Some are purposely set up traps, and some are really out of character. The spot of light stopped moving. Silently, a shadow of a person floated in the air. It was Lin Feng's appearance. In general, his style is tough, but not reckless. Every step he takes has a clear goal and interest. Occasionally, he will act casually, but not often. Lin Daohan's tone was calm. Besides, this person is good at borrowing power. He has a deep understanding of Taishu Temple. We have the intention of supporting him, and he has taken advantage of our power. But his thinking is very clear. He has no intention of relying on Taishu Temple. As for his personal cultivation, Lin Daohan continued, although we have not really seen the bottom, we can make a rough estimate. First, the 9 glory sky-shattering formation at the Desolate Sea Spiritual Conference was limited in power because of the formation treasure. Its attack power was about the peak of the second tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm, or slightly higher, but definitely lower than the third tier. He didn't do anything himself. Instead, he used that big black umbrella, a strange treasure. Secondly, in the Battle of Kunlun Mountain, Tao Master Heavenly Wind used his full strength to control the 9 heavens astral gale formation and the Golden Crow Great Saint. Both of them were at the second tier of the primordial spirit realm. He didn't do it himself. Instead, he used his mountain, Mount Yujing, to break the 9 heavens gale formation, kill Tao Master Tianfeng, and suppress the Golden Crow Great Saint. Lin Daoan was neither fast nor slow, as he deduced one by one in a clear and orderly manner. Third, in the Battle of the Arctic Ice Sea, the ancient Kuanpeng was resurrected. This demon was originally at the third tier of the indestructible demon soul, but its soul was not fully integrated and awakened. Its strength at that time should be at the peak of the second tier of the indestructible demon soul. The master of the celestial gate of wonders still didn't take action himself. Instead, he used other methods to destroy the resurrection of the ancient Kuanpeng and seized half of the Kuanpeng's remains. Silently, Lin Daohan said, "If there's only one, it might be a coincidence. But if there's so many, it proves one thing. This person is deliberately hiding his strength. It could be high or low, but it's more likely that his strength is low. At least, it can't be at the third tier of the primordial spirit realm." Yen Mingwa listened to Lin Daohan's deductions with a smile and asked, "He used a doppelganger at the Yuanying stage to destroy the resurrection of the ancient Kuanpeng. He must have used the magical effect of the Scorpio golden bead, right?" Lin Daohan replied, "According to the records in the temple, the demon clan's fate-reversing soul revival ritual must meet 3 conditions. First, it doesn't matter if the target's divine spirit is destroyed, but the bloodline and body must remain. Second, it must be a direct descendant of the resurrected target who sacrificed himself. At the same time, the cultivation must be at least at the Demon King realm. Third, and most importantly, there must be a fate-reversing heaven stone. The main reason why this ritual was lost in the long river of history, and few people know about it, is that the fate-reversing heaven stone has not appeared in the world for tens of thousands of years. During the ritual, there must be no disturbance, or the ritual will immediately fail. But it's not easy to disrupt the ritual." Lin Daohan said, "If Lin Feng did not use the Scorpio golden bead to duplicate the fate-reversing heaven stone and disrupt the ritual, I really can't think of any other way to do it. If there is, then it means that his means are beyond our knowledge. I have to overturn all my previous deductions." Yin Minghua pondered for a moment and suddenly said, "Eldest senior brother, do you think it's possible that he has not cultivated a primordial spirit at all? During the battle outside the Sandbar city, although Pang Jie was no match for him at all, when junior brother Pang took out the magic treasure hexagonal sword, he no longer fought personally. Instead, he used his formation to wrap the hexagonal sword in junior brother Pang. Does this mean that his true cultivation is not enough to defeat junior brother Pang with a hexagonal sword? Or, at least, it's possible that his true cultivation is exposed?" Lin Daohan said, "It's entirely possible, but not certain. Therefore, according to my deductions, this person's cultivation is most likely at the first tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm, followed by the pinnacle of the Yuanying realm. The possibility of a second-tier primordial spirit transformation realm is lower, and a third-tier primordial spirit transformation realm is completely out of the question." Yin Mingyuan muttered, "Yes, at least that primordial spirit transformation realm cannot be explained." Lin Daohan said calmly, "That armor of his can be used as a way to test things out. This time, when you go with him to the medium-class world to fight the Qiongqi, you can keep an eye out. You might as well find a chance to probe the background of his magic treasure." Yin Minghua nodded. "I will." The green-clothed girl suddenly smiled. She brushed her hair behind her ear and asked, "Eldest senior brother, what if? And I mean, what if our deductions are wrong, and this person's cultivation is much higher than the first tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm?" Lin Daohan said calmly, "Then I will be very happy that the Shushan Sword Sect has a strong opponent." Yin Mingwei smiled. What if his cultivation is much lower than the first tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm? Since the start of the conversation, Lin Daohan, who had been calm since the start of the conversation, suddenly fell silent. He seemed to have a slight emotional fluctuation. After a while, he said silently, "If his cultivation is much lower than the first tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm, it means that the Tao technique he cultivates is above the great Tao mystical arts of our Taishu temple." Yin Mingwei smiled and did not say anything else. Lin Daohan's emotional fluctuation only lasted for a moment, and he quickly returned to normal. His gaze pierced through the endless void and landed on Yin Mingwei. "Junior sister Yin, are you sure you want to continue on that path?" Yin Mingwei answered calmly. "I believe that the path I have chosen is the right one." Lin Daohan nodded. "If that's the case, I respect your choice. From now on, we will still be walking side by side. But sometimes, we will have to face each other and see who is better." Yin Mingwei chuckled. "This is the worst news I've heard in my life. But it doesn't matter. At least our ultimate goal is the same." She knew very well that if their ultimate goal was not the same, she would not have the chance to leave White Cloud Mountain. Lin Daohan said silently, "That's right. Whether it's us or Junior Brother Pang and the others, our ultimate goal is the same. Junior Sister Yin, I look forward to your performance. Perhaps you will really surprise me." As she spoke, the light figure in front of Yin Mingwei disappeared. Silently, Yin Mingwei did not move. After a long time, she cast her gaze towards the distant horizon. It was as if she had passed through endless space. Her gaze was a little dazed. "Lin Feng, what kind of person are you?" On Mount Yujing, Lin Feng looked at the frowning black dragon Jiayu with a bit of amusement. Regarding the bracelet brought by Jade Dragon White Light, Lin Feng did not care too much. Either way, he could block the magic power transmission of the bracelet, not letting some people with ulterior motives lock onto Jade Capital Mountain's position in the void turbulent flows. Looking at White Light's appearance, she was not aware of this. Therefore, Lin Feng did not plan on making things clear either. But Jiayu was troubled. Looking at that empty heart link bracelet, he hung his head and sighed. Lin Feng looked at him, not knowing whether to be angry or amused. He asked, "Since you can't get along so well, why did you marry her in the first place?" The old dragon had a sorrowful look on his face. "Sect Master, I didn't want it either. It was my wife who invited an elder to make the decision and set up our marriage." Oh, Lin Feng was really rather surprised this time. It was actually her who chased you instead? You really can't judge a book by its cover. I've really underestimated you in the past. Jiayu grinned. "Sect Master, your words hurt me too much. To think that this old dragon was also one of the best in the Supreme Dragon Pool back then." Under Lin Feng's doubtful gaze, Jiayu's words became less and less confident. Finally, he let out a bitter laugh. "Actually, I also didn't expect it to be like this. My wife is the #1 beauty of the Supreme Dragon Pool's younger generation. When she chose this old dragon back then, I really felt like I was dreaming." Jiayu said, "Sect Master, you should also know that the White Jade Dragon clan has to continuously shed their scales from childhood to adulthood, right?" Lin Feng nodded. "That's right, this seat knows. Actually, she was rather unremarkable when she was young." A look of reminiscence surfaced in Jiayu's eyes. Shedding scales made her scales all over her body. She was terribly ugly. Furthermore, her figure back then was very fat and short, simply like a wooden stake. Speaking up to here, Jiayu felt somewhat guilty. His eyes furtively swept the surroundings, fearful that White Light would suddenly appear again. If those words just now were heard by White Light, he would inevitably get a good beating again. Lin Feng shook his head and laughed. "Your wife is resting in the stone chamber. Don't be like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bough." After Jiayu let out 2 embarrassed laughs, His eyes looked in the direction of his stone chamber residence. Actually, the White Jade Dragon clan will all shed their scales. Only her figure is fat, so she appears especially ugly. At that time, some dragons of the same age as her often teased her. Lin Feng smiled. You stepped forward bravely? Jieyu was a little embarrassed. I'm older and cultivated early. At that time, I was already a demon commander. My father and her father are best friends, so I helped her. Melodramatic, oh melodramatic. Wait, something doesn't seem right. Lin Feng sighed, in admiration in his heart. Then, he looked at Jieyu somewhat strangely. That's not right. According to this seat's observation, your wife's personality should be rather calm and self-restrained. Only when facing you does she seem to change into a different person. Just because she's jealous? The corners of Lin Feng's mouth twitched slightly when he saw Jieyu's rather awkward smile. He suddenly recalled the painful development between Tuntin and the Blackwater mysterious underworld, and his heart began to pound. You demon race can't all be so strange, right? Chapter 439. The corners of Lin Feng's mouth twitched slightly, looking at Jieyu rather speechlessly. Other than being jealous, did you provoke your wife in other ways? Jieyu smiled extremely awkwardly and said hesitantly, That, Secmaster, you don't know. Although I protected her when she was young, her talent was one of the best in our entire Supreme Dragon Pool. So her strength rose very quickly, and in a few years, she was even stronger than me. Jieyu's expression was somewhat disappointed at this time. She's a nostalgic person. She didn't forget this old dragon even after becoming an adult. At that time, she had already become the #1 beauty of the dragon pool. Her potential and strength were also very high. Being together with her, it was my turn to become the object of everyone's ridicule instead. Jieyu grinned and said rather unhappily, I also worked hard to cultivate. I don't hope to surpass her, but at least not be worse than her, right? But geniuses and ordinary people are really different. As time passed, not only did I not close the gap, but the gap became bigger and bigger instead. Jieyu said dejectedly. Later, she took the initiative to propose marriage to the elders. We got married, but the people who ridiculed and ostracized me became more and more. When Lin Feng heard up to here, he secretly curled his lips and thought to himself, Isn't this nonsense? A fresh flower stuck on your whatever, it would be weird if it didn't draw hatred. Lin Feng didn't even need to think to know that back then. When White Light took the initiative to propose marriage to Jieyu, she probably overcame a lot of resistance from the Dragon Race elders. Even Taishu Temple probably wouldn't be happy. The demon race's marriage issue was simpler than the human race, but it was also more primitive and crude. That was, the strong would marry the strong. Especially the female strong must marry the male strong. This involved the issue of the next generation's fertility. Lin Feng looked at Jieyu, his gaze sizing him up, and said somewhat disdainfully, The more it's like this, the more you should work hard to become stronger. Jieyu nodded embarrassedly, but his eyes revealed helplessness and despair. The talent gap between him and White Light was in all aspects. Enjoying the same resources and conditions, his strength would only be worse. Even though White Light had never said anything before, Jieyu felt the pressure in front of her getting greater and greater. Guilt and admiration fused together, and actually made him more and more fearful of facing White Light. Lin Feng glared at him. Come on, if you were really afraid of your wife, would you still flirt around outside? Speaking of which, it's really hard for you to be my monk dragon for so long. Generally speaking, if the legal wife was too domineering, her husband's dignity as a male would suffer a serious setback, and he would seek a balance with the weaker and more docile opposite sex. When Jieyu heard this, he quickly waved his hand. Secmaster, you've misunderstood just like my wife. I've never wronged her. Although I'm tempted by other beauties sometimes, it's just a thought. I've never wronged my wife. Lin Feng smiled and said, Then your wife said that every time you didn't return to the dragon pool, you were charmed by someone else? Jiayu smiled bitterly and said, "That's why I said it was really a misunderstanding. She would have that kind of misunderstanding mainly because—" Speaking up to here, Jiayu suddenly stopped talking, and the expression on his face became even more awkward. Lin Feng looked at him curiously. "What's going on?" Jiayu shook his head repeatedly, his face full of regret, and directly wanted to turn around and leave. He didn't intentionally keep Lin Feng in suspense, but he really let it slip. Right now, it was too late for regrets. Lin Feng stopped him and said indifferently, "Jiayu, you shouldn't have hidden the matter of you peeping on Hu Yin from your wife." Jiayu's eyes widened. "I didn't," Lin Feng said silently. "Who can prove it?" Jiayu's face was immediately filled with grief and indignation. "Sectmaster, you're clearly framing this old dragon." Lin Feng nodded nonchalantly. "You know what to do now. Sectmaster, with your status, how could you do such a thing?" Jiayu's eyes kept turning, trying to dispel Lin Feng's thoughts. "This is detrimental to your dignity." Lin Feng chuckled. "You seem to be mistaken about one thing. At my level, I can do whatever I want. Why would I be limited by those superficial rules and regulations? This seat's dignity has never come from a straight face." Jiayu was completely in despair. His eyes widened, and he panted heavily. After a long time, he sat down on the ground, looking at Lin Feng with grief and indignation, but there was nothing he could do. He hesitated for a long time and said hesitantly, "My wife would have that kind of misunderstanding mainly because, that we've been married for more than 100 years and the number of times we've slept together." He was in human form at the moment. He stretched out his hand and spread his fingers. After thinking for a while, he stretched out his other hand and spread it out. "Roughly, can be counted on the fingers of 2 hands," Jiayu said rather embarrassedly. His voice became smaller and smaller, and his head drooped lower and lower. In the end, he simply wished he could find a hole in the ground to burrow into. Lin Feng looked at him with some shock. "How can that be?" He sized Jiayu up and down. Although some words were not spoken, how could Jiayu not see through that gaze? "I'm very normal," the old dragon said in a high voice. But immediately, he was somewhat lacking in confidence. "It's just that when facing my wife, I can't quite bring out my strength." Seeing that Lin Feng still did not believe, Jiayu panicked. "It's true. When facing other women, I'm very normal. Although there aren't real swords and spears, there are real reactions." Lin Feng looked at Jiayu in front of him, and then his gaze looked in the direction of the cave that Jiayu lived in. He could not help curling his lips. What a waste. Husband and wife's life being so disharmonious. It was also no wonder that White Light would often be jealous, suspecting that Jiayu was womanizing outside. He suddenly thought of something and looked at Jiayu. "Then you guys don't have heirs, either?" Jiayu nodded with a bitter smile. Lin Feng could not help being at a loss whether to laugh or cry. This problem was a little serious. According to what he knew, dragons were lustful by nature. Mating with other demon races, giving birth to mixed-blood descendants was very easy. There were many demon races that had dragon race bloodline. Oftentimes, it was some dragons who did not control their waistbands, the product of a single spring breeze. But the awkward thing was that it was extremely difficult to reproduce pure-blooded descendants between the dragon race. White Light and Jiayu's union was originally denounced by people within the dragon race, feeling that it was a waste of White Light's bloodline talent. Not having heirs, all this while the immense pressure on the husband and wife pair could be imagined. Jiayu's claws would go soft facing White Light. It was originally too great on a psychological level. Continuing to pressure him, the old dragon's claws would go even softer. Lin Feng looked at Jiayu rather speechlessly. For a moment, he actually had a somewhat speechless feeling. Only after quite a while did he pop out a sentence. "Useless man? No, useless male dragon." Jiayu covered his face with both hands and did not even dare to make a sound. He was so ashamed that he nearly dug a hole to bury himself. Lin Feng looked up to the sky and heaved a long sigh. Sighing, he started musing. When Jiayu saw that Lin Feng did not laugh at him, his mind calmed down a little. Looking at Lin Feng, he could not help having some more hope in his heart. Could it be that Sect Master possesses remarkable abilities and can even resolve this matter? After a moment, Lin Feng's gaze looked over towards Jieyu. A warm and genial smile akin to the sunshine in spring surfaced on his face. It really works? Jieyu looked at Lin Feng's smile, and hope rose in his heart. But at the same time, his back unconsciously felt somewhat cold, as if something not too good was about to befall him. Lin Feng said in a harmonious voice, Jieyu, go back and rest first. You've also done your best these few days in my Xianmen Tianzong. This seat won't treat you shabbily. Thank you, Secmaster. The old dragon was slightly perturbed as he bowed to Lin Feng, then turned around and left. He was in a state of unease and did not realize that he was walking on a straight line. Lin Feng looked at Jieyu's back as he left, and the smile on his face became more and more radiant. This kind of thing needs to be done by a professional. Thinking of this, Lin Feng used his mana and called Xiao Yin over from Burning Heaven Cliff. Xiao Yin had been cultivating in seclusion during this period of time. His cultivation did not improve much, but the foundation of his Dao technique realm was becoming more and more stable. Previously, he had always been brave and diligent in his cultivation, but it was inevitable that his foundation was not strong enough. This time, he was trapped in the calamity of the true fire, so he simply patiently and carefully polished his own mana cultivation. After a period of precipitation, his whole person was like steel that was quenched. His spirit and appearance were completely new. Although at the moment, in order to balance the true fire that was causing chaos in his body, he still could not easily fight with others. However, he could move freely, and on the surface, there were no major problems. His control of the true fire was also becoming more and more skillful. Once he passed through the calamity of the Yin Wind and advanced to the late stage of the Golden Elixir, he would be able to completely refine and control the three great true fires in his body. Master, you were looking for me? Xiao Yin asked curiously. Lin Feng nodded. There is a matter that you can handle. Although he was trapped in the calamity of the true fire, Xiao Yan's heroic spirit did not diminish. Master, please tell me. This disciple will definitely do his best. Lin Feng nodded with satisfaction and smiled. Using his mana, he sent a message to Xiao Yan's ears. Xiao Yan suddenly widened his eyes. Mas, Master. For a moment, Xiao Yan suspected that he was hallucinating. Lin Feng's expression was as calm as usual as he repeated it again. Xiao Yan was completely petrified at this moment. He looked at Lin Feng in a daze and said with some difficulty, Mas. Fu. Lin Feng said indifferently. Jieyu's wife went up the mountain to look for her husband. You already know about this matter. Xiao Yan did not understand why Lin Feng suddenly mentioned something that seemed to be completely unrelated, but he still replied, Yes, this disciple knows. He could not help but laugh. This old dragon is really miserable, marrying such a wife who is like a female Yiksha. Lin Feng said in all seriousness, Don't make fun of Jieyu. You only know one thing and not the other. He then told him about the problem between Jieyu and White Light. At first, Xiao Yin found it funny when he heard it, but as he listened, he gradually sighed. Every family has its own difficulties. Looking at his expression, Lin Feng knew that Xiao Yin was thinking about how Xiao Zhe did not abandon him after a genius became a waste in Wuzhou City, but because of this it attracted even more people to mock him as a fresh flower stuck on cow dung. With Xiao Yin resonating with this, Lin Feng knew that there was most likely a chance, so this matter that Master is asking you to do now is for the sake of them. When Xiao Yin, who was originally still sighing, heard this, his face immediately turned bitter again. Master, but this is too. Chapter 440. Master, can we think of other ways to help the couple? Xiao Yin said with a bitter face. This is too. Lin Feng's expression was calm. To what? Xiao Yin mumbled and couldn't say anything. Lin Feng lightly said, Your heart is free from impurities. When you look at things, you will also not be tainted by dust. No matter what it is, as long as you yourself maintain a normal heart, then you can treat everything equally. In the end, this thing, your black cloud flag, your nether evil flame, the true fire of the sun, and the soul-gathering pill you take when you cultivate, is just a part of the creation of all things in this world. What's the difference? Lin Feng stood tall and had an otherworldly demeanor. He stretched out his palm, and a leaf from a mysterious sky treasure tree fluttered down. The leaf, which was originally about an acre in circumference, rapidly became smaller, and the reddest of the leaves spiraled and landed on Lin Feng's palm. Everything in this world, from its own point of view, no matter who it is an independent individual different from the masses. Slowly, Lin Feng said, but if we leave the individual's point of view and look at it from the world's point of view, we are just a part of the creation of all things. He looked at Xiao Yin and smiled quietly. And we cultivate so that we can transcend this ordinary existence. Even from a macroscopic point of view of the world of creation, it was still different. You must first recognize this kind of ordinary existence, then you can transcend. As Lin Feng said this, he handed the mysterious sky treasure tree leaf to Xiao Yin. Xiao Yin took the leaf and was a little confused. After a while, he slowly replied, "Disciple was too naive. Thank you for enlightening me, Master. Don't worry about its use. In the end, it's just a medicinal pill." Hearing this, Lin Feng nodded with satisfaction and made a victory sign to himself in his heart. Success again. Xiao Yin pondered for a while and felt that something was wrong. He looked at Lin Feng embarrassedly. "However, Master, no matter what, please help me keep it a secret. Don't let others know. They don't have the same insight as Master, so it's inevitable that they will misunderstand me. If news of this spreads to my grandfather and Zhener, they will kill me." Lin Feng smiled and said, "It's not for your own use. What are you afraid of? Don't tell me you really want to try it yourself?" Xiao Yan's head instantly shook like a drum. "How is that possible? Master, you can't joke about this. Since that's the case, then hurry up and go." Lin Feng waved his hand, but when he saw Xiao Yin standing still, he couldn't help but ask curiously, "Is there anything else?" Xiao Yin looked embarrassed. He stood there for a long time and mumbled, "Master, the pill formula," Lin Feng said calmly. "There is no pill formula, and I have never refined this medicinal pill before. This task is assigned to you. It's all up to you to figure it out yourself." Xiao Yin suddenly opened his mouth wide. His intuition told him that he had been tricked. Master? Lin Feng nodded indifferently. "I'll leave everything to you. I'll wait for the good news." "Okay." Xiao Yin nodded helplessly and said weakly, "Then, Master, please give this new medicine a name." Lin Feng rolled his eyes. "Name?" He thought for a while, and a smile slipped out of the corner of his mouth. He chuckled and said, "Let's call it I Love a Piece of Firewood." Xiao Yan's head was full of question marks. "I love a piece of firewood. What does this mean?" Lin Feng laughed so hard in his heart that his stomach hurt, but he still looked serious on the surface. He said calmly, "There's no need to ask more. Just call it this name. By the way, the dragon race's physique is innately strong. You have to pay attention to this when you refine the medicine. The medicinal effect might as well be stronger." Xiao Yin said goodbye to Lin Feng and returned to Finching Cliff with the task of refining I Love a Piece of Firewood. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. He sighed. Forget it. Anyway, it's not for my own use. I'll just take it as a pleasure to help others. No, it's a pleasure to help dragons." There was no pill formula. Xiao Yin had to figure out by himself. However, he had never come into contact with similar medicines, so he could only explore everything from scratch. However, this was not a problem for him. Originally, this kind of medicine was accidentally invented by Taoists when they were refining pills. Xiao Yan's alchemy attainments were already not shallow. Soon, he found out a few tricks, but they were all very superficial. The pills that were refined in the preliminary stage could probably only excite ordinary people. Cultivators with a little bit of qi cultivation could suppress it, not to mention a dragon in the Demon King realm like Jieyu. However, everything was difficult at the beginning. As long as he found the right direction, his progress would be very fast. He just had to figure out how to improve the medicinal effect. No matter how much I convince myself, I still feel that doing this kind of thing is weird. Xiaoyan kept criticizing in his heart. At the same time, he refined another batch of pills. He definitely would not test the medicine himself. He only needed to use his mana to test it, and he would roughly know the medicinal effect. Oh, the medicinal effect is getting stronger. However, with the current materials, I have reached a bottleneck. I need to add new materials to further improve the medicinal effect. Xiao Yin put away the pills. He felt as if he had forgotten something. After thinking for a moment, he slapped his forehead. That's right, it's time to send a new batch of freezing frost due to that fox. He stopped the fire and walked out of the alchemy room to return to Sky Gold Pavilion. Different from the above-board pill refining in the past, this time before Xiao Yin left, he first carefully tidied up the pill formula. After confirming that there wasn't even a single trace or medicinal fragrance, only then did he stealthily push open the door. After carefully looking outside and discovering that there wasn't anyone else, did he step out. At this moment, he was looking in all directions and listening in all directions. He was afraid that his previous actions would be discovered by others. The more I feel that I've been tricked by Master again, Xiao Yin muttered as he arrived outside Fox Yinyan's cave. He explained his purpose of coming, and after getting Fox Yinyan's permission, he walked in. Xiao Yin wrapped a few drops of freezing frost dew with his mana and put them down. Then, he did not stay any longer. He cupped his fist at Fox Yinyan. I will take my leave. He did not know if it was an illusion, but Xiao Yin felt that Fox Yinyan's beauty today was especially breathtaking. Not good. I have been in that medicinal fragrance for so long. It is affecting me. Xiao Yin immediately reacted. He did not dare to stay any longer and was about to leave. His mana was used to suppress the true fire, so his willpower was very weak. If he stayed any longer, he would make a fool of himself. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Fox Yinyan's little nose suddenly moved slightly, and her ears trembled slightly. Her originally cold face suddenly became even colder. It was as if there was a layer of frost on it. She looked at Xiao Yin with a gaze so cold that it made people shiver. Behind her, there were even 6 foxtails flashing. So, you are a dirty and dissolute person. Despicable. Fox Yinyan squeezed out a few words from between her teeth. Xiao Yin could clearly see the word despicable in her left eye and the word despicable in her right eye. When put together, it was disdain. Xiao Yin was tongue-tied. At this time, he suddenly remembered that even though Hu Yin is a cold and elegant person and never pretends to talk about the matters between men and women, but no matter what, she is still a fox, even if she has never eaten a pig before, she can still see a pig run every day. As for the smell of things like, I love a piece of firewood, Fox Yin was very familiar. Her fox clan had their own fox fragrance, which had a similar effect. Although Xiao Yin had already cleaned up, as long as there was a little smell, Fox Yin would immediately be able to smell it. This time, even if Xiao Yin jumped into the sea, he would not be able to clear his name. He practically ran out of Fox Yinyan's cave. He was filled with grief and indignation. Master, you tricked me this time. After throwing the task of refining medicine to Xiao Yin, Lin Feng threw the matter to the back of his head. He was now in the library, looking at the derived, unmovable rule-eye scripture with a bitter smile. Using the incomplete, unmovable rule-eye scripture that Shi Tianhao, Zhu Yi, and the others had extorted from Liang Yuan, Lin Feng had successfully derived the complete, unmovable rule-eye scripture. But what made him depressed was that just like the Mahavarokana scripture recorded on the Kasaya, although the basic scriptures of the unmovable rule-eye scripture were complete, it lacked a general outline. The general outline was the core of the basic scriptures, but it was also relatively independent of the basic scriptures. With the general outline, one could definitely derive the basic scriptures, but with only the basic scriptures, one could not derive the general outline. The general outline of the Mahavarokana scripture was the 10 forms of the Mahavarokana palm, and the general outline of the unmovable rule-eye scripture was the immovable venerable's hidden 10,000 fundamental seals. This seal was the source of all Buddhist techniques. In actual combat power, it was inferior to the Mahavarokana palm, but it was the foundation of Buddhist techniques and had endless uses. In a sense, it was even more precious than the Mahavarokana palm. Lin Feng sighed. Forget it. I'll leave it like this for now. There will always be a chance. He looked at the Buddhist relic that Zhu Yi had seized from the Celestial Pool sect and thought, I've already extracted the essence of the unmovable rule-eye scriptures concept from it, so there's no point in keeping this relic. It's better to let it return to its roots. Lin Feng rode on Mount Yujing and once again descended into the territory of the Great Zhou dynasty, arriving at the ruins of the Great Thunderclap Monastery. Passing through the void, Lin Feng landed on the mountain range where the ruins of the Great Thunderclap Monastery were. He looked around and could not help smiling. That's right, that Song Qing Yuan from the Celestial Pool sect is still locked up on the mountain. Chao Wei must be very anxious, right? Let him be anxious for a while longer. I'll release Song Qing Yuan after some time. It should be about time. Chao Wei could sense that Song Qing Yuan was not dead, but he was unable to determine his whereabouts. Connecting the dots between the place where Song Qing Yuan had disappeared and the fact that Lin Feng had appeared nearby, Chao Wei would most likely suspect that Song Qing Yuan had fallen into Lin Feng's hands. However, he had no proof. Chao Wei had also been heavily injured during the battle in the Arctic Sea and had no choice but to return to the mountain to recuperate. He would not be able to find Lin Feng for the time being. However, Song Qing Yuan was a core talent of the Celestial Pool sect's younger generation. Chao Wei would definitely not sit by and do nothing about his disappearance. As Lin Feng thought about it, he arrived at the ruins of the pagoda forest in the mountain behind the Great Thunderclap Monastery. Looking at the desolate and dilapidated pagoda forest, he sighed and waved his sleeves. Another deep crater appeared on the ground. Lin Feng threw the relic in his hand into the deep crater. Then, he channeled his transcendence energy again, and the crater disappeared. The rocky ground closed up and returned to its original state. Just as Lin Feng was about to turn and leave, a system notification suddenly rang out in his mind. The host has triggered a random side mission. Return to ultimate bliss. Lin Feng was stunned. He checked the mission description in the system and saw that it said, the host has sent a Buddhist relic back to the ruins of the pagoda forest for the second time. The host has triggered a random side mission. Return to ultimate bliss. Chapter 441. Lin Feng was surprised that he could trigger the system's side mission in such a way. He looked at the mission description carefully and smiled bitterly. This mission is a bit difficult. Mission background. The Great Thunderclap Monastery has been destroyed. The pagoda forest that stored the relics of the deceased monks has been destroyed. Most of the relics are lost. Mission objective. Collect the lost relics and bring them back to the ruins of the Great Thunderclap Monastery for a new burial. Mission time limit. No time limit. Lin Feng looked at the mission time limit and was not happy at all. It would be great if there was no time limit, but according to the system's usual scam, it meant that the mission was extremely difficult since the conditions were so generous. Lin Feng looked at the mission description again. It clearly meant that he had to send all the lost relics back to the Great Thunderclap Monastery for the mission to be considered completed. This was simply a scam. Who knew how many Sarairas there were in total? Who knew where these Sarairas were? And who they were in the hands of? It would be fine if they were all in someone else's hands. However, if one of the relics was randomly left in some godforsaken place, he would never be able to find it. Although the system had a motto, which was that the harder the mission, the better the reward. However, there was no such thing as the hardest mission. Lin Feng smiled bitterly, his consciousness retreating from the system. A voice transmission crystal in his hand suddenly vibrated. He crushed it, and Yin Mingyue's voice sounded. Sect Master Lin, we can basically confirm that the Qiongqi demon race did not return to Tianhuang mainland. Instead, they are hiding in a medium-sized world and waiting for an opportunity to strike. The Qiongqi race not only collected the materials for the 9 Glory Sky crashing array through ancestral Master Kunyu and the others in the Divine Land, but they also sent people to collect treasures in Tianhuang mainland. From the current situation, the 9 Glory Sky crashing array is about to be completed. Yin Mingyue's voice became more solemn. Time is of the essence. We need to head to that medium-sized world as soon as possible. Lin Feng said silently, I'm in the Great Zhou Dynasty, at the ruins of the Great Thunderclap Monastery. You can meet me there. We'll be there soon. After Yin Mingyue finished speaking, she cut off the voice transmission. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. Did she just say we? Other than the Taishu Temple, there are many other people. Slowly walking out of the ruins of the Tempest Temple, Lin Feng strolled among the mountains. The divine gate above his head opened wide, and a beam of clear light shot up into the sky, breaking through the void. Among the surging purple clouds, the shadow of Yujing Mountain was faintly discernible. Lin Feng formed a spell sign with both hands. The essence, energy, and spirit of his entire body completely merged with the white jade capital mountain above his head, the cyclic purple chi, and the mysterious heaven treasure tree. Time, space, spirit, and matter all four reached a state of perfect balance. An enormous amount of purple mist flowed down along the clear light and poured into the top of Lin Feng's head. Within the mist, the mysterious heaven precious tree shone with a seven-colored light. Enveloped by the light, the enormous jade Jing mountain shrunk infinitely, and finally, along with the purple mist, fell into the top of Lin Feng's head. Lin Feng's spirit shook violently, and he felt drowsy. This was a sign that his spirit was seriously lacking. For Lin Feng, who was currently in the middle stage of yuanying, this kind of situation was almost impossible. But now it was really happening to him. Lin Feng laughed bitterly. I'm still pushing myself. My transcendence energy is almost frozen to death. Right now, I'm still lacking in the things I have on hand. After dealing with the Cheongqi demons, I'll get more good stuff. I'll definitely go to the system and play it big. Master, what's going on? On Yujing Mountain, Xiao Yin, Shi Tianhao, and the others all realized that something was wrong. Yujing Mountain was still enveloped by the purple chi, but outside the purple chi, it was clearly no longer the spatial turbulence. It was just that they were blocked by the purple chi, so they couldn't find out what was happening outside. Lin Feng composed himself and said lightly, Don't be impatient. Master will be heading to a medium-class world in a while. When the time comes, I'll bring you all to broaden your horizons. But that place is very dangerous, and it's not a place you can go right now. Just stay on a mountain with peace of mind. Xiao Yin and the others answered in unison, Yes, disciple understands. Lin Feng nodded and suddenly laughed. He thought to himself, Other people have their fated sons of heaven bringing old grandpas with them, but I'm bringing a group of fated sons of heaven with me. I wonder who's more eye-catching. Lin Feng continued to walk between the mountains. He was neither light nor heavy, and he didn't reveal any transcendence, energy, or aura at all. He was just like a normal person. In the beginning, he walked with uneven steps. His steps were unsteady, and his movements were awkward. His limbs looked uncoordinated. After walking for a while, his movements gradually became more agile, and he was no longer as stiff. Later on, his steps became more and more relaxed, leisurely, and carefree. He strolled between heaven and earth, faintly becoming one with heaven and earth. But he still didn't use any transcendence energy around his body. Because of the suppression of Jade Capital Mountain, in reality, his transcendence energy was still extremely sluggish. The current Lin Feng seemed to have returned to the time when he was in the Qi refinement and foundation establishment stages. But he was one with Jade Capital Mountain, and his understanding of the great Tao of heaven and earth became more and more clear. The obscure and stiff transcendence energy was squeezed out bit by bit, like fine steel being repeatedly tempered and hammered, becoming purer and purer. After walking in the mountains for an unknown period of time, Lin Feng suddenly stopped and turned to look at a mountain peak behind him. On the mountain peak, the air suddenly rippled like water. The rippling of the air disappeared in a flash, and the figure of a girl in green appeared on the mountain peak. She looked down at the clear stream, calm and at ease. She had a noble temperament, and her facial features were exquisite and beautiful. She was the successor of Taishu Temple, Yin Mingwei. Yin Mingwei took a step forward, and she was already in front of Lin Feng. She smiled and said, "Sect leader Lin, how have you been? I, Mingwei, greet you." Lin Feng nodded. "Fellow Taoist Yin, it's been a long time." The two of them looked at each other calmly, but in fact, they were secretly calculating and guarding against each other. Ever since they met, they had been helping each other, but also guarding against each other. They were both enemies and friends. Yin Mingwei had used Lin Feng's help to trick Pang Jie, and Lin Feng had also received a lot of help from Yin Mingwei, especially a lot of useful secrets and intelligence. Yin Mingwei said, "I haven't congratulated sect leader Lin for obtaining half of the Kuan Peng's secret treasure. You've gained a lot." Lin Feng shook his head indifferently. "Although I had expected that the Kuan Peng demon race in Infinite Mainland might cause trouble, I really didn't expect them to obtain the fate-defying heavenly stone that hasn't appeared for tens of thousands of years." With the fate-defying heavenly stone in hand, they activated the fate-defying soul returning ritual and almost revived the ancient Kuan Peng. Yin Mingwei smiled faintly and said, "The Kuan Peng demonic race obtaining the fate-defying heavenly stone was indeed unexpected. No one could have predicted it. Fortunately, sect leader Lin successfully disrupted the ceremony and caused the Kuan Peng demonic race to fail." Lin Feng looked at Yin Mingwei and said calmly, "As far as I know, the 10 sages of the demon race are in the limelight in Infinite Mainland. Among them, the Enchantress is the most powerful and influential. He already has the power of the demon race's Saint Emperor in the past. The Golden Crow demon race and the Kuan Peng demon race are both opponents of the Enchantress. The Golden Crow Great Sage invaded our divine land and was suppressed by me. Although he deserved it, it also benefited the Enchantress." Yin Mingwei nodded slowly. "That's right." She glanced at Lin Feng and said with a smile, "So, sect leader Lin, you let Kuan Peng off this time and left it to the Enchantress to deal with." Lin Feng revealed a faint smile. "That's just one of the reasons." Yin Mingwei's eyes flickered slightly, and she looked like she was in deep thought. Lin Feng asked, "Other than the two of us, are there any other Taoists from other factions joining the expedition against Qiongqi?" Yin Mingwei smiled. "They should be arriving soon." Before she finished her sentence, she and Lin Feng looked into the distant horizon together. There, a crack appeared in the void. From a gap, 2 old men walked out one after the other. The old man in front was dressed in a white robe with golden edges. He had white hair and a youthful face. His face was like jade, and he had the aura of a king amidst his graceful demeanor. He was the great Qin dynasty's Prince Anliang, Shi Zongyue, whom Lin Feng had met once at the Wilderness Sea Assembly. He was an expert in the second tier of the primordial soul realm. The old man a step behind him had a tranquil and indifferent expression. His robe was embroidered with all the stars in the sky, and they glistened under the sunlight. The star patterns seemed as if they were alive, circulating ceaselessly as they developed the most profound principles of the stars in the universe. He was an old acquaintance. In the past, when Lin Feng sent Xiao Yan to the Celerita's Sword Sect's cloud-traversing peak for an appointment, the Qin dynasty's crown Prince Chongyan also went to the cloud-traversing peak. At that time, the person who accompanied them was Tao Master Xingdo, the great Qin dynasty's primordial soul realm offering. Lin Feng greeted the 2 primordial soul realm experts. "Prince Anliang, long time no see." He looked at Tao Master Xingdo. "Is it Tao Master Xingdo this time?" Shi Zongyue's expression was calm. He nodded and said slowly, "The great Qin dynasty is responsible for the accident at the Wilderness Sea Assembly. This time, we have to thank sect leader Lin for providing us with the clues. It makes us feel a little ashamed." Tao Master Xingdo smiled and said, "Sect leader Lin, how have you been? I will follow Prince Anliang's lead on this trip." Lin Feng smiled. The Qin dynasty coming was within his expectations. After all, the great Qin dynasty and the Qiongqi demon tribe had a feud. After the incident at the Wilderness Sea Assembly, the Qin dynasty was almost disgraced. If they did not settle the score with Qiongqi, It would not be justifiable no matter what. Yin Mingyue also smiled and greeted Shi Zongyue and Dao Master Xingdou. Then, she looked to the other side. Lin Feng said lightly, "The people of Mount Shu Sword Sect should have arrived by now, right?" Back then, Lin Feng used the information of Qiongqi to exchange for Yin Mingyue and Taishu Temple to stop the Mount Shu Sword Sect. Both sides did not go to the Kunpeng hidden treasure in the Arctic Ice Sea. If Taishu Temple wanted to persuade the Mount Shu Sword Sect, they naturally could not just rely on empty words. Everyone was jealous of the Nine Lights, Sky, Cracking Formation, and the Mount Shu Sword Sect would definitely try to interfere. Yin Mingyue chuckled and said, "They are here." The void was suddenly cut open. A sharp and threatening sword essence flashed through the space. It was so sharp that it made people's hearts go cold. Two figures slowly walked out of the space, like two peerless swords being unsheathed, overflowing with killing intent and hostility. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows slightly because he could clearly feel that one of the people's killing intent was actually aimed at him. Chapter 442. Shushan Sword Sect, the human world of the Tianyuan Great World, one of the three holy lands of the divine land cultivation world. In the past, it was on par with Taishu Temple and Big Thunder Temple. Shushan Sword Sect is the #1 sword sect in the world. Its disciples are all sword cultivators. They do not practice spells or forge magic weapons. They fight all over the world with a long sword. Their attacks are sharp and their fights are fierce. They are famous in the world. There is even a widely spread saying in the divine land: Shushan cultivators are one level higher. This means that in actual combat, any Shushan sword cultivator can fight other cultivators by at least one small realm. Different from the Taishu Temple that most of the time lives in seclusion, while Shushan Sword Sect is developing its own sect, it also gathers the Heavenly Sword Sect, Wilderness Sword Sect, Celeritas Sword Sect, Blaze Sword Sect, and the other 8 sword sects to form the 9 Heaven Sword Alliance, becoming a huge force that even Taishu Temple has to pay attention to. It's just that there are many conflicts and disputes within the 9 Heaven Sword Alliance. No matter if it is Taishu Temple, or the Great Zhou, or the Great Qin, they all do not wish to see a united 9 Heaven Sword Alliance with Shushan Sword Sect as the core. Because of the characteristics of sword cultivators, Shushan cultivators all show off their abilities, and their actions are also more overbearing. The unified appearance characteristic of Shushan sword cultivators is that the scabbards of their swords will all be engraved with landscape inscriptions. At this moment, the 2 great sword cultivators that appeared in front of Lin Feng did not carry a sword on their back. It's just that their sharp sword essence caused everyone to raise their eyebrows. One of them, his sword essence and killing intent, faintly pointed towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression was as calm as before, silently looking at the other party. That is a middle-aged man wearing silk clothes with 3 strands of black beard on his chin. He has a hooked nose and a pair of sharp eyes. His entire body emitted a vicious sword chi that was not concealed in the slightest. Generally speaking, great cultivators who have reached the primordial soul stage will not easily reveal their mana and aura. They are not deliberately hiding it, but naturally harmonizing with the laws of heaven and earth, indistinctly becoming one with nature. Only when they attack will they break away from heaven and earth and form their own style. However, this hook-nosed middle-aged man in embroidered robes was completely different. Just by standing there, he seemed to be incompatible with the fortune of this world. Lin Feng looked at him as if he was looking at a sharp sword that was moving against the heavens, the tip of the sword pointing straight at the universe. The essence, chi, and spirit of a Shushan sword cultivator were completely exposed without any concealment. Moreover, the higher the cultivation, the more obvious this state was. Lin Feng had also seen great sword cultivators of the primordial divinity realm, like Venerable Swordsman Flowing Light and Venerable Swordsman Glorious Sunday. They were like long swords that had been sheathed, unaffected by the passage of time. Only when the sharp swords were unsheathed could one appreciate their peerless elegance. However, the hook-nosed man in front of him didn't seem to need a scabbard at all. He just wanted to sharpen his sword with everything in the world. He seemed extremely arrogant and domineering. Lin Feng understood in his heart. The way of the sword that this person cultivates should be the most domineering and vigorous Shaoshang sword of the Mount Shu sword sect's 6 meridian swords. But looking at his cultivation, he is at the first tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm. In that case, he is no longer venerable swordsman of Shaoshang. Based on what Lin Feng knew, the Mount Shu sword sect was led by the sect leader. Below the sect leader were the sword masters and grandmasters who wielded the 6 meridian swords. And these sword masters were all experts at the second tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm. Other than that, there were also some experts at the first tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm who were extremely proficient in the way of the sword. The strength of Mount Shu was evident from this. The hook-nosed man in front of him was probably the primordial spirit transformation realm grand elder under the sword master of the Shaoshang sword branch. As for the other one, Lin Feng looked at the old man beside the hook-nosed man. Beside his arrogant and domineering companion, this old man's presence was not only not weak, but even stronger. The old man's face was simple and unadorned, and his eyes were blank. His entire person was like a stubborn rock. It seemed like nothing could arouse his interest, but at the same time, nothing could make him waver. His sword was simple and dignified. It seemed to be low-key, but it was even more vigorous. It was even more powerful than the overbearing and fierce Shaoshang sword beside him. Although the hook-nosed man at the first tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm was slightly ahead of the old man, it felt like he was opening a path for him. Seeing this old man, Yin Mingyue straightened her expression and bowed. So Honorable Swordsman Guanchong has come personally. Junior, Yin Mingyue greets you. Dao Master Xingdou also had a solemn expression as he cupped his hands in salute. King Anliang Shizonyue said slowly, Honorable Swordsman Guanchong, I trust you have been well. Lin Feng smiled slightly. This old man was indeed the leader of the Mount Shu sword sect's Guanchong sword branch, Honorable Swordsman Guanchong. The 6 meridian swords of Mount Shu had different mysteries. Each of them had studied a particular aspect of the way of the sword to the extreme. The Shaoyang sword was neutral and gentle. It was the most difficult to cultivate, but after mastering it, it was perfect and flawless. The benevolent were invincible, and there were no flaws at all. It was recognized as the best of the 6 swords. The Shaoshang sword was the most ferocious and overbearing. It seemed to be indestructible and could cut through everything in the world. The Taiyin sword was the most flexible and changeable. It was unpredictable. The sword was like clouds and mist. It did not have a fixed shape, but it did not affect its powerful lethality. It was different from the Celerida's sword of flowing clouds of light sword sect. The Celerida's sword of flowing clouds was a transformation between sword chi and sword light. The sword chi was ever-changing and the sword light was sharp. However, the Taiyin sword of Mount Shu was both unpredictable and powerful at the same time. The Shaoyang sword was the most agile and the fastest. It could cut through the void and turn the horizon into a short distance. It could travel through space to kill the enemy. This sword was one of the few powerful magical powers that could be cultivated by Golden Elixir period cultivators in the Tianyuan Great World. It could travel through space. And when used by Yuanian cultivators, or even primordial spirit mighty figures, it had another kind of mysterious power. The Li Xiong sword usually hid thousands of sword chi in the user's body. The user had to endure the endless pain of being cut by thousands of knives. Before hurting the enemy, the user would first hurt themselves. But the moment the sword was drawn, the cultivator's sword chi and spiritual power would all burst out. It was the strangest and sharpest of the 6 meridians swords of Mount Shu. Its attack power that was focused on one point could be said to be the number 1 of the 6 meridians of Mount Shu. And the Guanchong sword was the most unremarkable of the 6 meridians swords of Mount Shu. This was because it was a sword technique that displayed the ancient and dignified nature of the sword to the extreme. It looked cumbersome, but it was actually very ingenious. When the cultivator's cultivation level was low, its power was not obvious. But as the cultivator's cultivation level increased and their understanding of the sword path became more and more profound, the power of this sword path would become more and more powerful. It was almost comparable to the Shaoyang sword. It could even restrain the Shaoshang, Taiyin, Shaozi, and Li Xiong swords to a certain extent. And the Guanchong swordsman standing in front of Lin Feng right now was without a doubt a great sword cultivator who had already trained the Guanchong sword to an extremely high level. Lin Feng looked calmly at Guanchong's swordsman and said with a faint smile, "The 6 meridians, swords of Mount Shu. I've heard a lot about you." Guanchong's swordsman greeted Yin Mingwei and the others in a somewhat stupefied manner. His gaze finally fell on Lin Feng. He paused for a while, but did not speak. His somewhat lifeless eyes looked at Lin Feng, a bit more liveliness in them. But at the same time, the ancient and unsophisticated sword will around him became more and more dignified and sharp. Beside Guanchong's swordsman, the hook-nosed middle-aged man looked askance at Lin Feng. Slowly, he asked, "You're the sect leader of Xinmin Tianzong, Lin Feng?" Lin Feng said calmly, "How should I address you, sir?" Yin Mingwei said from the side, "This is Ning Lang, sword master of Duanyue of Mount Shu's Shaoshang sword branch." Ning Lang looked at Lin Feng and suddenly said, "Leave the talisman to the dimensional world where Qiangqi is. You can leave now." Lin Feng's expression did not change. Looking at Ning Lang, the corners of his mouth suddenly revealing a hint of a smile. "Oh." Ning Lang took a step forward. Suddenly, a vigorous and domineering aura surged towards Lin Feng like a tide. His tone was indifferent, as if he was saying something that couldn't be more normal. "Leave the talisman and get lost immediately. Shushan will not interfere with the Kuan Peng's treasury. This is your reward. You should know when to advance and when to retreat. Don't be ungrateful," Ning Lang said indifferently. "If not for that, do you think you can get half of the Kuan Peng skeleton with your abilities? I really regret it. I didn't expect you to be so useless. You lost half of the ancient Kuan Peng skeleton for the demons to bring back to infinite wilderness. If we had gone, we would have killed the Kuan Peng completely. How could we have let it escape back to the demon realm?" His tone was very casual, but it also included the Qin dynasty represented by Shi Zongyue and Dao Master Xingdou. Dao Master Chang'e, who was seriously injured in the battle that day, was still recuperating in the Great Qin dynasty's West Hill City. But Shi Zongyue and Dao Master Xingdou did not say anything. The battle between the Shushan sword sect and Xinmin Tianzong was not a bad thing for the Great Qin dynasty. They were not prepared to get involved. After hearing this, Lin Feng was not angry. Instead, he looked at Yin Mingwei and asked, "What did Taishu Temple say?" Without waiting for Yin Mingwei to answer, Ning Lang said, "Don't talk nonsense. Taishu Temple can protect you once, but it can't protect you a second time. In the Battle of Kunlun Mountain half a year ago, if Taishu Temple had not stopped Sword Master Li Meng from Shushan for you, you would have been dead." Lin Feng looked at him with interest. "Oh, are you sure?" Ning Lang's tone was indifferent. "I know that you are relying on Yujing Mountain. I have to admit that the mountain is indeed powerful," but he raised his eyelids, and his eyes were like 2 cold bolts of lightning. He continued to take a step forward, and the domineering sword will around him had completely condensed into a solid substance, cutting the surrounding space. He looked at Lin Feng with disdain. "Although my sword isn't as fast as Xiaozhi's sword, we're only 5 steps apart right now. At such a close distance, if I stab you to death with my sword, do you think you'll have the chance to summon your Jade Capital Mountain to smash me?" Ning Lang said silently. "Or do you have a strange black umbrella, but it is just a turtle shell? It can only defend, not attack. How can you fight against Shushan?" He looked at the barren mountains around him. "This is really a good place. Great Lane Temple, a monk temple in the past. How prosperous was its incense? But it still ended up like this. How do you think Xianmin Tianzong compares to Great Lane Temple? Lin Feng's expression was as calm as usual. He did not even look at Ning Lang, but looked at Honorable Swordsman Guanchong. Do his words only represent himself, or the entire Shushan? Honorable Swordsman Guanchong looked at Lin Feng blankly. He did not say a word. Ning Lang took another step forward. The domineering and sharp sword had completely sealed off Lin Feng. Slowly, he said, I will say for the last time, leave the talisman behind, and then scram as far away as you can. The matter of Qiongqi is not something you can participate in. If you don't leave, then don't ever leave. At this time, Lin Feng finally turned his attention to Ning Lang. Looking at the great sword cultivator close at hand, he suddenly smiled. Chapter 443. Lin Feng looked at Ning Lang and suddenly laughed. He then looked at the barren mountains around him. It is indeed a pity that a 10,000-year-old temple was destroyed. Lin Feng smiled faintly. But what is even more regrettable is that your sect lost the Taiyin swordsman, but in the end, you did not even get a kasaya. You made a wedding dress for others. Lin Feng shook his head lightly. Pity and lamentable. Yin Mingwei, Shizong Yue, and Xingdou Dao Master were speechless. Lin Feng's words were a little harsh. To be fair, if not for the intervention of Shu Mountain Sword Sect and Taishu Temple, the Tempest Monastery would not have been destroyed. Without Taishu Temple's formation-breaking drum, the Allied forces could not have broken the Great Sun Virokana formation of the Tempest Monastery. Without Shu Mountain Sword Sect's Taiyin swordsmen, they could not have cut down the sorrow iron trees guarding the back mountain of the pagoda forest. Taishu Temple only played a supporting role. Although it played a key role, it could not be said how much effort they put in. But Shu Mountain Sword Sect was different. They led the Nine Heavens Sword Alliance in the war and suffered heavy losses. The Taiyin Sword Master, a second-tier primordial spirit cultivator, Taiyin swordsman, had fallen. In addition, other primordial spirit cultivators had died. It could be said that they had suffered a great loss. But the final result was that the great Zhou dynasty had obtained the greatest fruit of victory. Not only had they made up for their losses, their strength had improved by leaps and bounds. As for the spoils of war that Shu Mountain Sword Sect obtained, it would be an exaggeration to say that they did not even get a kasaya. But it was certain that the gains and losses were not proportional. Ning Lang used the destruction of the Tempest Monastery to pressure Lin Feng. But in the end, Lin Feng reopened old wounds. He stared at Lin Feng and nodded slowly. Very good. His sharp sword was no longer suppressed. The domineering and fierce Shaoshang sword exploded. A dazzling cold light appeared in front of everyone. That chilling sword light had completely materialized, like a peerless divine sword, spanning across the sky. Endless sword chi and sword intent were compressed together, incomparably condensed, incomparably violent. The distance between Ning Lang and Lin Feng was only a few meters. But at this moment, this distance seemed to contain an infinite space. Thousands of feet of cold light flashed in this space, intimidating everything in the world. The boundless space twisted violently, turning the horizon into a very short distance. It seemed incomparably far away, but in fact, it was right in front of him. The tip of the 1,000-foot-long cold light was already right in front of Lin Feng. The distance of several meters disappeared in an instant, and Lin Feng could even feel the cold intent of the sword light. Extremely close and extremely far, extremely big and extremely small. They contradicted each other, yet they appeared at the same time, giving off a strong feeling of distorted power, as if it wanted to break apart the entire world. The spiritual power of the sword light condensed and did not dissipate, while the domineering sword filled the surroundings. Wherever Lin Feng stood, the continuous mountain range was cut into ravines by the wild and arrogant sword will. The hard mountain rocks cracked and collapsed continuously. Everything happened in an instant. From the instant Ning Lang struck out with his sword, the fate of this world had changed. Facing this sword, Lin Feng also sighed in admiration in his heart. They are both at the first tier of the primordial spirit transformation realm, but he is stronger than Lord Xianming, Yu Xintao, and Lord Tianfeng. The number one sword sect, one of the three holy lands of the world, Shushan Sword Sect, truly lives up to its name. Although he was filled with admiration in his heart, Lin Feng did not care at all. From the moment he clashed with Ning Lang, he was already prepared. At such a close distance, facing such a powerful sword cultivator, Lin Feng indeed did not have enough time to mobilize Yujing Mountain. He could make it in time with the heaven-shrouding umbrella, but if he only defended and did not attack, how could he respond to Ning Lang's arrogance? If you are arrogant, I will be even more arrogant. If you are ruthless, I will be even more ruthless. If you're not convinced, I will beat you until you are convinced. Roar! Endless cold light suddenly emitted from Lin Feng's body, blocking everyone's line of sight and surrounding his entire body. A shrill and violent sword hum suddenly rang out, resounding through this part of the world. It was as if a huge, slumbering beast had suddenly awakened at this moment. Among the spectators, venerable swordsman Guan Chong, who had been silent all this while, as if nothing could arouse his interest, suddenly straightened his body. His eyes shone brightly as he stared at Lin Feng, who was enveloped by the cold light. However, he only felt a piercing pain in his eyes. Yin Mingyue and the others all widened their eyes, but they could not see anything. There was only endless cold light in front of them, causing even their spiritual senses to feel a pain as if they were being pricked by needles. Everyone felt a heart-palpitating cruelty and brutality. It seemed to be filled with endless thoughts of destruction and slaughter, symbolizing the most terrifying calamity in the world. It was as if the most violent and domineering beast in the world had finally broken through the cage that had imprisoned it. It had descended into the world and was about to destroy this vast 1,000 worlds. Ning Lang, who was directly facing Lin Feng, undoubtedly felt it the most intensely. This is sword light. It is even more ferocious and domineering than my Mount Shu's Shaoshang sword, and even more ruthless and fierce than Li Meng's sword. But how is this possible? The endless clear light suddenly gathered and transformed into a brilliant splendor. It was as if a shooting star had streaked across the sky, disappearing in a flash. However, when this splendor lit up, everything in the world lost its color and sank into endless darkness, like an abyss of destruction. The cold sword light that Ning Lang's Shaoshang sword had transformed into was directly shattered. The powerful sword chi and sword aura that had been compressed together all exploded, turning into an endless storm of sword chi that was about to wreak havoc in the space. Just this shattered and scattered sword chi was enough to destroy everything in the surroundings. However, before they could wreak havoc, they disintegrated one by one. The rays of sword chi and sword aura continued to shatter and shatter, becoming smaller and weaker until they had no power to speak of. They turned into gusts of wind in the air and disappeared without a trace. And at the end where Lin Feng's resplendent sword light had disappeared was Ning Lang, who was currently dumbfounded. He gave a fierce roar, his body already beginning to change. As the cold light flashed, he had already shed his human form, turning into a 10-meter long, as wide as a door, heavy and powerful, fierce and domineering. It emitted a powerful might, pushing the power of his Shaoshang's sword to the extreme. If he had not done this, he would have undoubtedly died when facing this sword of Lin Feng's. Duan Yu retreat. The venerated swordsman Guan Chong suddenly moved, his body flashing to block in front of Ning Lang. His index and middle fingers formed a sword, a dot of black light appearing at his fingertips. It slowly moved in the air, as if it was carrying 1,000 caddies of weight, its speed as slow as an old ox's broken cart. However, facing Lin Feng's meteor-like sword light, his slow speed still managed to catch up at the last moment, blocking this sword of Lin Feng's. The heavy black light was like a black hole bearing the weight of a world. Then age collapsed and died. Although it was only a little bit, It was so heavy that it seemed to condense a world within it. Venerated swordsman Guan Chang's expression was solemn. With a move of returning to simplicity, the clumsy and ingenious Guan Chang's sword exploded with astonishing power, forcibly blocking the incoming resplendent sword light. The black light and the clear light collided fiercely between heaven and earth, instantly filling everyone's vision, turning the entire world into a greenish black. As the light dissipated, venerated swordsman Guan Chang stood in place without moving. Slowly, he retracted his fingers. The dark red blood was shocking. Behind him, Ning Lang returned to his human form, a look of horror on his face. Uncle Master, Yin Mingwei, Shi Zongyue, and Xingdou Dao Master all gasped. Just now, Lin Feng's sword easily shattered Ning Lang's all-out attack. Then venerated swordsman Guan Chang, one of the 6 lineage's sword masters of Shushan, personally attacked, but was also defeated by one move. It was true that venerated swordsman Guan Chang had not used his full strength, but Lin Feng had only used one sword. Venerated swordsman Guan Chang's originally dull eyes were now cold. He looked down at his feet and said in a deep voice, "Good swordsmanship." Ning Lang's sword was condensed with sword qi, and just the sword essence was able to cut the mountain rocks. But in Lin Feng's sword, the power of the sword light was also condensed into a bundle, without any leakage. But after one sword, the continuous mountain ridges under venerated swordsman Guan Chang and Ning Lang's feet suddenly turned into powder. If the mountain rocks were alive, then their lives would all be killed by the sword essence of Lin Feng's sword just now. Everything in the world, whether it was alive or not, would tremble in the face of this sword. Everyone looked at Lin Feng with a solemn expression, but saw that the cold light had disappeared without a trace. Only Lin Feng stood silently in the void. His expression was still calm, as if nothing had happened. But in the eyes of everyone, he made everyone feel a chill in their hearts. The messy mountain range beneath their feet told everyone that everything that happened just now was not an illusion. Ning Lang's face was green and white. No matter how reluctant he was, he had to admit that he was only one step away from death. Shi Zongyue and Dao Master Xingdou looked at each other. The 2 primordial spirit experts were shocked and uncertain. Dao Master Xingdou was especially shocked. He was also at the first level of the primordial spirit realm. Although the Star River way he cultivated was mysterious, in terms of actual combat, he was afraid that it was not as sharp as Ning Lang's Xiaoshang sword. Ning Lang almost died in the face of Lin Feng's sword. If it was him, he was afraid that his primordial spirit incarnation would have been directly torn apart by that bright sword light. Back on Xingyan Peak, I tried to stop him. Fortunately, he did not use his sword at that time. Otherwise, Dao Master Xingdou could not help but take a deep breath when he thought of this. Shi Zongyue also frowned. He was confident that he could withstand that sword just now like Sword Master Guan Chang and would not be killed. But with his cultivation at the 2nd level of the primordial spirit realm, he could vaguely feel that Lin Feng did not use all his strength in that sword just now. Not only did he not use all his strength, but he even deliberately suppressed the power of the sword principle. If he used all his strength, Shi Zongyue could not help but frown more and more. Not only Yujing Mountain, but also his own cultivation is so strong. Yin Mingyue's eyes fell on Lin Feng. She gently tucked her hair behind her ear. Could it be that he is actually a sword cultivator? Is this his real, divine sense of proving the way? The scene fell into a dead silence for a moment. Everyone looked at Lin Feng with a complicated expression. Lin Feng stood quietly in the air, calmly looking at the bewildered crowd in front of him. His mind was actually placed in the mystic heavens' eternal light, heavenly grotto above Jade Capital Mountain. Watching that peerlessly vicious sword being forcefully put back into the sword case, he still let out a wild howl of unwillingness. Chapter 444. Like a bloodthirsty beast that had been trapped in a cage for a long time, it could finally break free and drink its fill of fresh blood. The ominous sword in the sheath was extremely excited, even though it had only sharpened a third of its original sharpness. Especially when the prey it was facing was sword cultivators like Sword Venerable Guanchong and Sword Venerable Broken Mountain Ninglang. The ominous sword was like a proud monarch being disobeyed by his subjects, becoming more and more violent. At this moment, after being forcefully pushed back into the sword sheath by Lin Feng, one could imagine how frustrated he was. The giant sword box, which was the size of a small mountain, kept shaking and rumbling like a landslide. The tyrannical sword intent surged in the mysterious heaven-time light paradise. This time, old Golden Crow, who was suppressed under the sword case, was suffering unspeakably because of the sword intent. Now, he suffered an unexpected disaster and became a punching bag. I could still unleash 2 more sword strikes. Lin Feng silently calculated in his heart. Before meeting up with Yin, Mingyue, and the others, he had already guessed that the Shushan sword sect might interfere. Therefore, he made preparations in advance and merged the Jiejing mountain with his spirit. He could then directly extract the ominous sword from the mysterious Heaven-Time Cave, and then use the power of the Jiejing mountain, the mysterious Heaven Treasure Tree, and the cyclic purple chi to force the ominous sword back into the sword case, so that it would not really go berserk and lose control. This sword was truly ferocious, and after Lin Feng truly wielded it, he had a deeper understanding of its sword intent. It was a concept that surpassed slaughter, ferocity, and ruthlessness, and it was even deeper and darker. Slaughter was targeted at living individuals, but this ominous sword seemed to view the entire great Tao of heaven and earth, as well as the world of creation, as a living individual, and then wanted to kill and destroy that life. The ancient killing god sect sword principle was known as the heaven-defying absolute sword, but compared to the sword intent contained in this ominous sword, it was like a child that had not grown up. The heaven-defying nature of the heaven-defying absolute sword lay in the fact that it defied the heavens and was ruthless. In essence, it still maintained reverence towards the heavens and acknowledged the might of the heavenly way. However, it stubbornly resisted and defied the heavenly way like a rebellious child. As for this ominous sword, it was going to kill the heavenly Tao. Under the heavenly Tao, all living beings were nothing in his eyes. They were just things that came along when he was punishing the heavens. Different from the Shushan sword Tao, different from any other killing sword in this world, this peerless, ominous sword was a sword that could destroy the world. Right now, the sword was not yet mature. It could not even be considered as showing off its sharpness. However, once it was completely polished and released all of its brilliance, it would definitely shock the entire heaven primal world. Lin Feng carefully analyzed the sword will and thought, if I want to truly control this sword, I still need a lot of effort. He pondered in his heart while maintaining a calm expression on his face. He calmly looked at Sword Venerable Guanchong, Yin Mingyue, and the others before him. However, Sword Venerable Guanchong was not so calm. At least, at this moment, Sword Venerable Guanchong was no longer as dull as before. His eyes flashed coldly as he stared at Lin Feng. Just like Shi Zongyue, he was able to clearly sense that Lin Feng's sword strike from before hadn't been fully executed. In fact, as a sword cultivator, his feelings were even more profound. He could vaguely sense that although Lin Feng's strike just now was extremely sharp, the sword will in the sword Tao was not complete. However, even this incomplete sword will was not pushed to the extreme by Lin Feng. Instead, he had held back. However, this strike was already stunning enough. Sword Venerable Guanchong's entire life's cultivation was on the sword. In his heart, he imagined the scene of Lin Feng's complete sword will exploding without any restrictions. He actually felt that his usually calm state of mind was constantly in turmoil. Someone secretly probed and wanted to see if Lin Feng only had the strength for one strike. However, at this moment, when he looked at the calm and indifferent Lin Feng, he still could not see through Lin Feng's strength. This caused everyone to be secretly shocked. Only when he has plenty of energy left can he still be able to block our detection so flawlessly. He really did hold back. Lin Feng said calmly, "Does this Dao friend's words just now represent himself, or the entire Shushan sword sect?" Ning Lang's face turned green. How could he not understand the meaning in Lin Feng's words? If he had only spoken on behalf of himself, Lin Feng would have killed him here today. Sword Venerable Guan Chong raised his hand and stopped Ning Lang from speaking. The elder looked up at Lin Feng. Slowly, he said, "The master of the Taoist Xianmen lives up to his reputation. Shushan acknowledges that you have the right to participate in this crusade against Qiongqi." When Lin Feng heard this, he suddenly laughed lightly and shook his head slowly. "Since you can take one strike from me, I also acknowledge that you have the right to travel with me." He looked at Ning Lang and smiled calmly. "But he does not have the right." Ning Lang was furious. Even Sword Venerable Guan Chong was stunned. For a moment, he could not speak. They thought that they had already taken a step back, but Lin Feng did not see it that way. After that shocking strike, the initiative had shifted to Lin Feng's hands. Now, it was his turn to decide who could go against Qiongqi. Some people would scram back to where they came from. Silently, Lin Feng looked at Ning Lang and said, nonchalantly, "The Shushan sword sect is the #1 holy land of the sword in the world. I have also heard of it for a long time. But if some people think that they can do whatever they want with the protection of Shushan, then I do not mind making a move. 1,000 years of hard work to form a primordial spirit. It is not easy to obtain, but it is easy to lose." Lin Feng said indifferently, "Ning Lang, you are not even qualified for me to draw my sword. But seeing that you are a sword cultivator, I will make an exception. If you can take one strike from me with your own ability and not die, then I will allow you to travel with me. Otherwise, disappear from my sight." All of Ning Lang's sword chi and spiritual power were vibrating, because he remembered that not long ago he had said something similar to Lin Feng. If he did not leave now, then he could forget about leaving forever. Venerable Guan Chong frowned. Lin Feng's indifferent gaze had already shifted to him. Venerable Guan Chong, you have the ability to protect yourself, but you cannot protect him. That strike just now was reserved for you. From the start, it had not been aimed at Ning Lang. That was why he could survive. Venerable Guan Chong was silent. Just as Lin Feng had said, he could deal with Lin Feng if he used all of his skills. But if Lin Feng was bent on killing Ning Lang, he was not confident that he could stop him. The difference in difficulty between killing and protecting was too great. The one who wanted to kill had the absolute advantage. Yin Mingyue suddenly said, "Venerable swordsmen of Duan use spiritual power and aura are unstable. It is not suitable for him to participate in the battle. You should return to Shushan to recuperate." Shi Zongyue also said slowly, "The Qiongqi demon tribe controls the 9 glory sky shattering formation. They cannot be underestimated. This trip requires the cooperation of all participants. Those who are not united will be more harmful than beneficial." When the two of them expressed their stance, Ning Lang's expression became even uglier. The cold light in Venerable Guan Chong's eyes suddenly dimmed. His entire person suddenly reverted to the indifferent look that he had when he first appeared. "Duanyu, you return to the mountain first. Between you and me, one of us needs to report the specific process and feelings of the battle with the master of Xianmen in detail to the sect." Venerable Guan Chong used his spiritual power to transmit his voice to Ning Lang. "Your actions have not been in vain. This Lin Feng is actually a sword cultivator who has attained Dao. This is beyond our expectations. We need to report back in time." Ning Lang took a deep breath. He seemed to be arrogantly provoking Lin Feng with the intention of suppressing Xianmen Tianzong's might. However, it was more to test Lin Feng's foundation. From the looks of it, he had found out Lin Feng's previously unknown secret. He had probably achieved his initial goal. However, Ning Lang had not expected Lin Feng to have such a powerful sword cultivation. He had almost killed him on the spot with a single strike. This time, Ning Lang and the Shushan sword sect had lost all face. This made Ning Lang feel extremely aggrieved. Silently, Venerable Guan Cheng said, "Today is not the time. There will be a chance to settle the score with this person in the future. The humiliation that Shushan has suffered today will definitely be washed away with this person's blood in the future." Ning Lang gave a muffled grunt. His entire person transformed into a beam of sword light. He tore through the void and flew away without looking back. Silently, Lin Feng watched Ning Lang leave. At this moment, his spirit was connected to Yujing Mountain. Shi Tianhao's voice rang in his ear. "Master, you let him off just like that?" In the previous battle, Lin Feng did a full live broadcast on Jade Capital Mountain. Witnessing the godly might of his sword that could destroy the heavens and the earth, the minds of everyone in the celestial sect of wonders were shaken and filled with fascination. Lin Feng smiled slightly. Just a clown. His attention returned from Yujing Mountain. Looking at Yin Mingyue, Shi Zhongyue, Venerable Guan Cheng, and Venerable Xing Do, he slowly said, "Everyone, let's move." Yin Mingyue gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Sect leader Lin, the Qiangqi demon tribe, and the 9 heaven-shattering formation are both of great importance. I have already made an agreement with the elders of the sect. After entering the medium-class world, if we confirm that the Qiangqi demon tribe and the 9 heaven-shattering formation are there, we will immediately set up a spirit design to receive the elders of the sect. Although she did not say it explicitly, Lin Feng understood what she meant. To suppress the great sage Qiangqi, who was at the 2nd tier of the undying demon soul realm, and the powerful 9 heaven-shattering formation, the current lineup was still not strong enough. They needed a 3rd-tier primordial spirit realm expert to have a higher chance of success. The Shushan sword sect and the Great Qin dynasty had the same idea. Slowly, Yin Mingyue said, "If the elders of the sect enter the medium-class world directly now, it will inevitably cause a disturbance in the medium-class world. If Qiangqi is hiding inside, he will immediately sense it and escape immediately. We won't be able to seal the world in time, and he will escape." Shi Zhongyue also nodded. "That's right. We are just making a vanguard." A group of 2nd-tier and 1st-tier primordial spirit realm experts were only responsible for making a vanguard. It was a little shocking to hear this, but the 9 heaven-shattering formation was one of the strongest formations of the demon race. It was worthy of the attention of the human cultivation world. Lin Feng looked at Yin Mingyue calmly. Yin Mingyue looked back at him with a smile, but her gaze was very solemn. It was just that under this serious gaze, how much probing was hidden. Lin Feng smiled inwardly, but on the surface, he looked calm. He said indifferently, "Even if we enter the medium-class world, Qiangqi will not be able to discover me." His words were ambiguous. As for whether it was because his cultivation had not reached the 3rd tier of the primordial spirit realm and would not cause a disturbance in the medium-class world, or because Lin Feng was so powerful that he could hide and suppress the fluctuations of the realm, it was up to Yin Mingyue and the others to determine for themselves. Yin Mingyue's eyes flashed. If this was before Lin Feng and Ning Lang fought, she would not hesitate to think that it was because Lin Feng's cultivation was insufficient. But after seeing Lin Feng defeat venerable swordsman Guan Cheng and Ning Lang despite suppressing the power of his sword will, Yin Mingyue was also a little shaken. Lin Feng's silhouette, which was gradually becoming clearer, suddenly became blurry again. The green-clothed girl revealed a smile. Silently, she said, "If that's the case, I'll have to trouble sect leader Lin." Lin Feng also smiled. He opened his palm and took out a talisman. The talisman flashed and broke through the void. Immediately, a black hole-like passage appeared in front of everyone. Chapter 445. Lin Feng had obtained the talisman from Kuan-Yue ancestor. It could communicate with and locate the dimensional world in the void and determine its specific location. Everyone followed Lin Feng through the void and entered the dimensional world. As soon as they arrived in this world, everyone frowned. The spiritual qi in this dimensional world was quite scarce, which was completely unfavorable for the survival of cultivators. The divine land of the boundless world had been developed by generations of cultivators over a long period of time. Many resources had gradually become scarce. Therefore, the powerful figures of the major forces were keen to develop new dimensional worlds and then rely on the original resources in the dimensional world to nourish the divine land. The dimensional world in front of them had always been hidden in the void, and no one had ever set foot in it before. This primitive dimensional world was also one of the targets of Yen Mingwei and the others, in addition to the 9 glory sky shattering formation. But now it seemed to be a wasteland, not suitable for cultivators to live and cultivate. Lin Feng looked around, and all he could see was a red wasteland with no end in sight. Without landing, they could feel that the red sand and stones on the ground were worthless. In the wasteland, there was no life or minerals rich in spiritual qi. In short, it was simply a poor place. Dao Master Xingdou frowned and looked at the distant horizon. Slowly, he said, "If there is no harvest there, this dimensional world will be a wasteland." Lin Feng and the others nodded and looked in the same direction as Dao Master Xingdou. They could vaguely feel that there seemed to be a relatively strong fluctuation of spiritual qi in that direction. Of course, the Qiongqi clan was also likely to live there. The few of them flew towards that direction together. While flying, Lin Feng lowered his head and paid attention to the red wasteland below. There were no humans nor demons here, only some strange-looking monsters born from the red sand and stones. Their strength was not strong, at most only at the Qi disciple stage. These monsters should be the natives of this dimensional realm. There should be some strong monsters among them. But according to what Ancestor Kuan Yu had said, the stronger monsters had already been slaughtered by the Qiongqi. Qiongqi was one of the 4 ancient fierce beasts, standing side by side with Tao Tai, Hun Dun, and Tao Wu. It had wings on its back and was covered with hedgehog fur. It looked like a cow or a tiger, and it was extremely fierce and vicious. Even among the demon clan, it was an extremely vicious race. Even if the small monsters in front of him weren't fish that had escaped the net of Qiongqi, they were newborn monsters that had been killed by the ferocious great demon after it had finished wiping them out. At this moment, he was standing in front of a disciple's abode. In front of him was a group of second-generation disciples. You've been on a mountain for some time now, so you must have some understanding of the environment on Yujing Mountain. The richness of spiritual energy here far surpasses that of other places. There's no need to say more about the barren medium-class world in front of you, and the other places in the divine land that you've lived in are also far from comparable to the mountain. The disciples nodded. The ignorant were fearless. The more they knew, the better they could understand the conditions in front of them. Slowly, He said, "I'm not telling you this to show off, nor to make you arrogant. I'm telling you a truth. The better the conditions in the outside world, the harder you have to work." The group of second-generation disciples bowed to in unison. "We will follow your instructions." He continued, "People should have lofty ambitions in life, but they shouldn't bite off more than they can chew. What you'll see next is not something you can really come into contact with now. The main reason I let you watch is to broaden your horizons." Everyone nodded like chickens pecking at rice. They were lucky enough to witness Lin Feng's battle with Sword Master Guanchong and Sword Master Ninglang of Broken Mountain. As long as one had the heart to cultivate and had truly embarked on this path of cultivation, there were few who had not heard of the 3 holy lands of the past. For these young disciples, before they entered the celestial sect of Xianmen, the Mount Shu Sword sect was a legendary behemoth in their eyes, a giant of the immortal Tao that they only dared to look up to. Some people, after entering Xianmen Tianzong, were loyal to the sect, but in the face of legendary holy lands like Taishu Temple and the Mount Shu Sword sect, they would always feel a little short of breath, as if they were dwarfed and felt guilty. Not to mention primordial spirit powerhouses like Sword Master Guanchong and Ninglang. In the eyes of young people, they were simply sword immortals from the heavens, like epic and mythical figures. They cannot be blamed. After all, Xianmen Tianzong had just established the sect and was still in the early stages. The psychological power it gave people was far less than that of the Mount Shu sword sect, which had been famous for tens of thousands of years. This was also a part of the sect's heritage. The Mount Shu sword sect did not need to express anything else. Just the words, Mount Shu sword sect, was enough to make many young people with dreams bow their heads and worship them. Such power did not come from words, but from Mount Shu's tens of thousands of years of heritage. The strong came forth in large numbers, and they killed one sword at a time. In the battle of the opening ceremony outside Sand Continent City, Lin Feng had consecutively defeated Kong Chong of Mount Shu and Pang Jie of Taishu Temple. It could be said that he had established his power. However, those two were still in the Yuanying stage. When a true primordial spirit powerhouse appeared, the pressure was completely different. Therefore, when they saw Lin Feng facing Sword Master Guan Chong and Ning Lang, the young disciples of Xianmen Tianzong felt a little guilty. In the end, it was Lin Feng who had shocked the heavens with his sword. He had almost killed Sword Master Ning Lang of Broken Peak on the spot, and even defeated Sword Master Guan Chong. This scene had a huge impact on the young disciples, especially when Lin Feng used the most famous swordsmanship of the Mount Shu sword sect to defeat the great sword cultivators of Mount Shu. It made this impact seem even more powerful. Although Lin Feng had only used one sword, it had completely shattered the mountain that was pressing down on everyone's hearts. It was as if the clouds had been dispelled to see the sun, and they were suddenly enlightened. Xianmen Tianzong is not weaker than others. Even a legendary sacred ground, like the Mount Shu sword sect, cannot suppress the elegance of our generation. Xianmen Tianzong. Sure, Tianhao, Zhu Yi, and the rest had always been full of confidence in Lin Feng. They were pleasantly surprised that Lin Feng's swordsmanship was so strong. Master's strongest mystique is actually swordsmanship. Sure, Tianhao blinked. I really want to learn this move from Master. Xiao Yan, who had been training in seclusion, had also left Burning Heaven Cliff and came to Jade Capital Mountain. Hearing Sure Tianhao's sigh, he thought for a while and said, I'm afraid it's because our current cultivation is not enough. Do you still remember the giant sword in the Dark Sky Time Cave? Although I haven't really come into contact with that huge sword box, I can vaguely feel that terrifying sword intent. This sword is still an incomplete sword embryo. It's very likely that it's a treasure that Master is currently refining. It's his weapon. Zhu Yi, who was beside him, nodded. That's right. It is still a long way from successfully blood bonding with it. Master used the sword case to suppress the Golden Crow Great Sage so that he could use the Golden Crow Great Sage to sharpen his sword. Yu Hongyan suddenly said, Before this, none of us knew that Master is also proficient in swordsmanship. Perhaps swordsmanship is just one of his thousands of mystiques? Sure Tianhao laughed and said, That's great. Master has so many powerful skills, so it is not necessary for him to use a sword. When the giant sword is refined, he can give it to me. Xiao Yin and the others laughed and scolded in unison. In your dreams, you want to have a piece of everything good? You are too shameless. Their conversation and laughter could be blocked with mana so that the second-generation disciples could not hear them, but it was still very easy for Lin Feng to hear them. Now that his spirit had merged with Jade Capital Mountain, his control of his mana had become extremely immature and awkward, but his perception of all the changes on Jade Capital Mountain had become more acute. Listening to his disciples' conversation, Lin Feng smiled in his heart. Just now, he had used the power of the Shantian treasure tree to block Xiao Yin and the others' perception of the Shantian Timelight Utopia. So when Lin Feng, Jade Capital Mountain, the Shantian treasure tree, and the cyclic purple chi became one and used this power to extract the ominous sword, Xiao Yin and the others did not know. As a result, they, like Sword Venerable Guan Chong and the others, mistakenly thought that Lin Feng's shocking sword was completely unleashed by his own cultivation. In their understanding, the giant sword case in a Shintian Timelight utopia was still an unfinished magic treasure and could not play a role. However, it is not easy to be an old grandpa, and it is even more difficult to be an old grandpa who has a group of people with him. Lin Feng smacked his lips. I have to improve my professional skills as soon as possible to do a good job in this promising job. As he thought about this, Lin Feng, Yin Mingyue, and the others flew over the vast red wasteland. Suddenly, a huge black shadow appeared on the horizon in the distance. Standing on the ground, it seemed extremely out of place. Lin Feng took a closer look and found that it was a strange forest. It was not quite appropriate to call it a forest, because the forest was incomparably large. It was like a primordial jungle that stretched on endlessly. The shade of the trees connected together, blocking out the sky and the sun. It was a spectacular sight, but in reality, under the dense canopy of trees, there were only a dozen or so thick tree trunks standing alone on the red wasteland. Each tree trunk was extremely thick, reaching thousands of feet in height. The trunks were straight and smooth, but above the trunks, there was a huge canopy and branches that extended in all directions, intertwining with the branches and leaves of the other giant trees. It was like a dozen or so giant pillars supporting a vast jungle, or like a giant building with a simple frame and roof. Everyone looked at this scene in shock. Yin Mingyue took a deep breath. That is the cloud forest tree. Whether it is in the divine land or infinite wilderness vast land, it has long been extinct. It can only be seen in ancient records. In the many known medium-class worlds, there has never been a trace of it. Slowly, Shi Zhongyue said, "This old man has only seen it in ancient records." It is said that in the primordial era, there was a powerful being who tried to cultivate one of the 4 great spirit trees, the ginseng fruit tree. As a result, there was a mutation, and finally, this mutated species, called the cloud forest tree, was born. The fruit's name is the cloud forest immortal fruit. Although it is not as miraculous as the ginseng fruit, it has endless uses. It is a first-class treasure. Lin Feng lowered his head and looked at the barren red plains. He said slowly, "This medium-class world might not have abundant spirit qi, but it should not be so barren. Now, it seems that the original spirit qi has been absorbed by these cloud forest trees." The others nodded. Yin Mingyue gently tucked her hair behind her ear. The Qiang qi that entered here first should have discovered this tree. They might be resting in the forest. We still have to be careful. Lin Feng and the others said, "That is exactly the case." Lin Feng was about to approach the cloud forest trees with the others when the system's notification rang in his ears. He couldn't help but be stunned. The lost relics of the great Thunderclap Monastery have been discovered near the host. Chapter 446. Hearing the system notification sound telling him that there was a relic of the Great Lane Temple nearby, Lin Feng was first overjoyed. The side mission he received previously was to search for the lost relics and send them all back to the pagoda forest behind the Great Tempest Monastery for reburial. Although there was no time limit, the difficulty of the mission was quite high, making people feel that it was extremely tricky. Listening to the system notification, it seemed that as long as there were relics around Lin Feng within a certain range, the system would automatically report. This reduced the difficulty of searching for relics by a lot. Although it was still difficult, at least there wouldn't be any regrets of passing by. But after the surprise, Lin Feng couldn't help but be puzzled. In such a desolate and almost barren medium-class world, why would the lost relics of the Great Tempest Monastery appear? Did it accidentally fall into the hands of Qiongqi, or did it belong to someone else? Lin Feng pondered in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He looked at Yin Mingyue and the others and said, "Keep in touch with each other. Let's split up and explore this place." Yin Mingyue looked at the cloud forest tree in front of her and said slowly, This place can perhaps be called the cloudy forest world. Lin Feng and the others nodded indifferently. They didn't mind Yin Mingwen naming this medium-class world. The ownership of this place could still be debated in the future. The most important thing now was undoubtedly to find out if the Qiongqi demon race was hiding here. Lin Feng, Yin Mingwei, Sword Lord Guanchong, Shi Zongyue, and Xing Do Dao Lord. The five of them split up and approached the tall cloud forest tree from different directions. Let's not talk about the cloud forest immortal fruit first. The trunk and leaves are all top-notch materials that can be used to refine magic treasures and artifacts. Lin Feng chose to approach a cloud forest tree from below, first flying in front of the trunk. The trunk in front of him was extremely thick. When Lin Feng approached it, it was as if he was facing a city wall. The surface of the trunk was jet black, and under the black color, there was a mysterious brilliance flowing. The bark was not rough, but as smooth as a pitch-black mirror. Lin Feng didn't touch it directly. He raised his head and looked up. The black tree trunk stood tall and straight like a heavenly pillar supporting the sky. Above his head was a vast expanse of green shade. Lin Feng walked all the way up and soon arrived in front of the shade. He saw the dense branches and leaves extending in all directions. The thick branches formed an impenetrable jungle. Deep within the branches and leaves, it was dark and tranquil. Lin Feng did not venture deep. Instead, he landed on a thick branch and silently sensed the changes in the flow of spirit qi inside the cloud forest tree. The spirit qi of these 10-odd cloud forest trees actually linked together through the contact between the branches and leaves. Lin Feng was a little surprised because he could vaguely sense that he had only landed on one cloud forest tree, but he seemed to be surrounded by the auras of over a dozen cloud forest trees. The spirit qi was so abundant that even the sky couldn't describe its vastness, and the sea couldn't describe its vastness. Lin Feng felt like he seemed to be facing the entire cloud forest world, facing a medium-sized world. It was also at this time that Lin Feng's brows suddenly furrowed. Strange, why can't I sense the self-awareness of these cloud forest trees? A medium-sized world did not have void lightning tribulation. Hence, no matter how powerful a species, absorbing and breathing spiritual energy to cultivate, they could only cultivate to the peak of the golden elixir period too. Even if these enormous cloud forest trees absorbed vast amounts of heaven and earth spiritual energy and stored it in their bodies, without experiencing lightning tribulation, they were unable to form a demonic nascent soul and achieve the position of demon king. But they would definitely be the strongest demon commanders. In terms of total demonic strength, even demon kings could not compare to them. Even many demon kings might not be their match. Disregarding other things, just in terms of total demonic strength, if these cloud forest trees became demons, it would be sufficient to rival demon race great sages who cultivated an indestructible demon soul. But here came the problem. Lin Feng completely could not sense the self-awareness of these cloud forest trees. He could only sense pure plant instincts. In other words, these cloud forest trees were the same as the Salo iron tree sapling that Lin Feng obtained back then. They could not be considered demons yet. They were just wondrous trees with spiritual beauty. But when Lin Feng just saw the Salo iron tree back then, that was just a sapling. While the cloud forest trees in front of him were already towering ancient trees that had grown for God knows how many years. Lin Feng was vigilant in his heart. Such tremendous spiritual energy. The foundation is also an incomparably thick spiritual seed. Even if it can't compare to ginseng fruit trees and Salo iron trees, it won't be too far off. After 10 million years of accumulation, it's impossible for them not to become demons. Right now, there was only one explanation for the situation. That was that someone refined these cloud forest trees and obliterated the tree demon divine soul, causing them to lose their self-awareness once again, becoming pure spiritual plants. And now, the spiritual energy undulations of these cloud forest trees were connected as one. Perhaps it was also the other party's means. This made Lin Feng have no choice but to be careful. The spiritual energy accumulated by more than 10 cloud forest trees was already extraordinary to begin with. Now that they were connected as one, it was as if they had transformed into a world. This made one even more vigilant. When faced with the suppression of a world, even essence soul experts would feel apprehensive. However, Lin Feng had the system to conceal himself. If it wasn't for direct vision, even if he stood on the branches of the cloud forest trees, it would be very difficult for the other party to discover his existence. Being able to reach the essence soul realm meant that they were all outstanding. Yin Mingwei and the others also quickly discovered the problem. Each of them displayed their own means to first conceal their tracks. Then, they continued to probe deeper into the depths of the cloud forest trees, searching for traces of the Qiangqi demonic race that was hiding here. Speaking of which, where's the Saraira? Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry to move forward. The system's notification just now rang out again. This time, the notification was more accurate. It told Lin Feng that the Saraira was currently moving in his direction. Lin Feng hid himself and simply didn't move, waiting for the hare to come to him. A moment later, a golden light suddenly flew out from the depths of the giant tree's branches. The golden light didn't fly very fast, but it had a heavy and solemn aura. It was the dharmic power of Buddhism. However, it was different from the peaceful dharmic power. This golden light contained a fierce and vicious aura. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. With his eyesight, he could see that it was a middle-aged man who was flying while riding on a Buddhist light. He was stepping on a pure gold alms bowl. The alms bowl turned into a golden light and lifted him up. This middle-aged man wasn't wearing a monk's robe. Instead, he was wearing a very ordinary gray robe. His expression was solemn, and he had a buzz cut. His hair was not longer than 1 centimeter. Among his sparse black hair, 9 dots could be clearly seen. Although he was dressed like a layman, he was a Buddhist monk through and through. Moreover, he was an eminent Buddhist monk who had reached the Yuanying realm. Only right now, his entire body was filled with a vicious aura, and it even contained killing intent. His expression was bitter, and his eyes flashed with a vicious light. No matter how he looked at it, he looked more like a butcher than an eminent Buddhist monk. Lin Feng looked at this monk and vaguely felt that he was a bit familiar. His mind spun, and a figure instantly appeared. In the past, when Lin Feng entered the Black Cloud underground palace and wanted to take Zhu Yi as his disciple, he once encountered a monk who escaped from the Great Thunder Monastery after it was destroyed. His Buddhist name was Hui Ku. In order to take revenge on the Buddhist Extermination Coalition army, in order to increase his own strength, Hui Ku refined the 24 Saraira of his sect's elders that he brought out of the monastery into magic items. The dharmic power that this Hui Ku cultivated was the art of Akala of the Great Thunder Monastery. However, it lacked the introduction. After seeing the art of Akala that Shaoyin cultivated, he had evil thoughts and wanted to steal it. In the end, he was killed by Lin Feng in the Black Cloud underground palace. Looking at this monk in front of him, Lin Feng thought of the Hui Ku of the past. Although Hui Ku was only at the foundation establishment stage, and this monk in front of him was at the Yuanying realm, their temperaments were extremely similar. Lin Feng looked at the pure gold alms bowl under his feet, and then felt his attainments in the dharmic power. He instantly had an idea, direct disciple of the Great Thunder Monastery. This person was also one of the monks of the Great Thunder Monastery in the past. After the monastery was destroyed, he escaped the net. Looking at this person's face and aura, one could tell that his hands were covered in blood. The number of lives that he had killed was probably uncountable. This was also a Buddhist cultivator whose life path was completely changed due to the destruction of the Great Thunder Monastery. The dharmic power that he cultivated in the past had already completely turned into hatred and anger, drowning his soul. When Buddhist disciples cultivate, their willpower is incomparably strong. They can see their hearts clearly and discern their true self. They won't easily be swayed. But once they step onto the wrong path, they tend to be even more stubborn and extreme. Huiku was like that in the past, and this monk in front of him was also like that. Although he didn't know how many relics he had, Lin Feng guessed that this darn baldy in front of him would probably refine the relics into Dharma artifacts without hesitation and use them to fight against enemies. As long as he could increase his strength and take revenge for the Great Thunder Monastery in the past, he was willing to do anything, even if you have to join forces with the demon race. Lin Feng muttered to himself. This person could freely move between the cloud trees, so he was clearly in cahoots with the demon race that occupied this place. It was very likely that he had been bribed by Cheongqi, like ancestral master Kuan Yu, to run errands for Cheongqi in the human world's divine land. However, ancestral master Kuan Yu obeyed Cheongqi for benefits, while this person was very likely to do it for revenge. Although your firm belief in taking revenge for your sect is worthy of recognition, your method is terrible. Lin Feng looked at the person's departing back with a cold gaze. Cheongqi used the 9 glory sky-shattering formation to wreak havoc in the divine land, and the damage caused is simply immeasurable. Not only the cultivation world, but even the mortal world will suffer. Just as Lin Feng was about to stop this person, he suddenly felt the cloud forest tree under his feet shake. Lin Feng slightly furrowed his brows. He endured it and did not move. Then he saw 2 huge beasts appear in the dense forest. These 2 beasts had wings on their backs and were covered in the fur of a hedgehog. They looked like a cow and a tiger, but their cries sounded like dogs barking. Cheongqi, it really is Cheongqi. Lin Feng took a deep breath. It was only at this moment that it was completely confirmed that the demon race hiding in the cloudy forest world was the Cheongqi clan that had wreaked havoc in the North Wind Sea and almost caused the collapse of the ancient desolate sea world. The 2 Cheongqi in front of him were both demon kings, and they also looked in the direction that the monk had left in. One of the Cheongqi said in a deep voice, "I hope that human can lure his uncle master here." On the other side, Cheongqi chuckled and said, "He definitely will. When his uncle master sees his juniors refining their sect Sarairas into mystic artifacts like the enemies who destroyed their sect, he will definitely not be able to hold himself back." The first Cheongqi also laughed strangely. When a human comes, the number will be gathered. Lin Feng listened to their conversation, and his brows furrowed even tighter. The number is gathered? What number? Why does it sound like the direction of the wind isn't right? Chapter 447. Lin Feng instinctively felt that something was amiss. He endured it and did not make a move to capture these 2 Cheongqi beasts. These cloud forest trees have lost their self-consciousness, but the trees are closely connected and can communicate with each other. It is clearly a formation set up by someone. Lin Feng's eyes flickered, and he gradually had an idea in his heart. Although it has not been activated and I can't tell what kind of formation it is actually faintly compatible with this entire dimensional realm. This formation is not simple. From the conversation of these 2 Demon King realm Cheongqi beasts, the so-called numbers should be referring to the number of people. The Cheongqi beast wanted to use that stubborn Buddhist cultivator to lure one of his fellow disciples here, who is his junior master in terms of seniority. This Buddhist cultivator was already at the late stage of yuanying. Although seniority did not necessarily mean that cultivation was high, since it was a trap and not a capture, then for the time being, it was assumed that the junior master had a higher cultivation. However, to be higher than the late stage of yuanying, then it could only be a great monk who had reached the primordial spirit realm and cultivated the Buddhist golden body. Tricking this Buddhist monk over, the number of people was gathered. It could be imagined that the others mentioned by Cheongqi also had the same cultivation as that Buddhist monk, belonging to the same level of group. In other words, they were all at the primordial spirit realm. Then, were these primordial spirit realm powerhouses referring to Cheongqi and the others, or Yan Mingwei and the others who entered the cloud forest world? If it was the latter, then it meant that the infiltration of Lin Feng and the others was already under the other party's control. Lin Feng silently sensed the cloud forest giant trees in front of him and slowly shook his head. At most, they can only sense our existence, but it is impossible to lock onto our location. Although these cloud forest trees are strong, they are, after all, not a dozen great sage-level beasts of the undying demon soul realm. But no matter what, the development of the current situation was somewhat unexpected. Lin Feng immediately transmitted his voice to Yin Mingyue and the others. Even Sword Venerable Guancheng was not left out. Under such circumstances, they needed to first unite and face the external threat together. The situation has changed. Be on your guard. Other than skipping over the matter of sensing that the monk has a Serairo on him, Lin Feng truthfully told the others about what he saw and heard just now. Everyone's feedback was not optimistic. Not only did Lin Feng sense the peculiarity of the cloud forest world, the few primordial spirit realm powerhouses had the same feeling. The great Qin dynasty's Prince Anliang, Shi Zongyue, immediately said, "Since it's confirmed that the demon race concealed here is Qiongqi, then there's no need to say anymore. This old man will guide my great Qin's powerhouses to this cloud forest world. No matter how many schemes there are, it's all futile in front of absolute strength." Yin Mingyue and Sword Venerable Guancheng pondered for a while and then said, "It should be so." Lin Feng did not say anything, tacitly agreeing to their decision. Then he felt 4 violent mana vibrations coming from 4 different directions. Yin of Yin Dao, 1 Feng, and Ti. She not to you Feng. She is not with to not Yin. She is no longer a pure conservative of Taishu Temple. Be it Taishu Temple, Shushan Sword Sect, Qin Dynasty, or Zhou Dynasty, they all had people waiting at the Divine Land. When Yin Mingyue, Sword Venerable Guancheng, Shi Zongyue, and the others sent back the message, they would immediately receive them and build a space tunnel. The top powerhouses of the few forces were also ready to charge in a cloud forest world. The Qiongqi demon race was powerful. There were many powerhouses in the race. There were 3 great demons at the undying demon soul realm. Qiongqi Great Sage was a powerhouse at the 2nd level of the undying demon soul realm. He was one of the 10 sages of the demon race and had been famous for thousands of years. But if the powerhouses of the few major human forces were to come out and block this cloud forest world, then even with the 9 glory sky shattering formation in hand, the outcome of annihilation would be unavoidable. The only problem was just how great of a price the human cultivators would have to pay. Therefore, Shushan Sword Sect, Qin Dynasty, and the other forces were most wary of each other. After annihilating the Qiongqi demon race, the ownership of the 9 glory sky shattering formation would definitely cause an intense fight. Of course, there were also the 10-odd cloud forest trees in this dimensional world. Lin Feng was still calculating how to obtain the greatest benefits for Xianmin Tianzong and himself in such a situation, even thinking of ways to stop Yin Mingyue and the others from opening the void tunnel. But now, the situation had clearly changed beyond his expectations. Lin Feng instinctively felt a bad premonition. Therefore, he took a tacit attitude towards Yin Mingyue and the others' actions. At this time, he needed to cut the Gordian knot. The distribution and fight for the spoils of war would always be built on the foundation of victory. If one had the confidence to win, it was fine if internal strife ruined the stage. But if internal strife led to the final failure, that would be a complete joke. But right at this time, the whole world seemed to shake. Lin Feng was rather surprised. That's right, the entire cloud forest world indeed shook a little. He looked carefully and saw that the branches of the cloud forest trees in front suddenly emitted a stretch of white brilliance. Over a dozen cloud forest trees that blotted out the sky, the white light on their bodies connected into one. Then he saw that the entire world was enveloped in a layer of misty white brilliance. The light screen was thin, but it was boundless, as if it was a cover surrounding the entire cloud forest world. Yin Mingyue and the others attempted to use their magic power to communicate with the Divine Land's void tunnel, but they all hit a wall in front of this white light. Under the envelopment of the white light, over a dozen cloud forest trees' branches and leaves all turned into light, turning into light trees that flickered with dazzling brilliance. And these over a dozen light tree size kept on growing, truly filling heaven and earth in all directions. The entire cloud forest world, a dimensional world, seemed to have completely turned into a world of trees. The red wastelands completely disappeared. Looking over, there were only the branches and leaves of large trees emitting light. The thick tree trunks below the treetops continuously extended downwards, as if they had penetrated deep into the boundless void. The ground had already disappeared, and over a dozen thick tree trunks reached the very bottom. Space distorted like over a dozen thick light pillars, gathering and coiling together, as if coming from the same root system. The few people's expressions all changed slightly. Shi Zhongyue said flatly, "It's impossible for old Qiongqi to have such strength. Even if he borrowed these over a dozen cloud forest trees to lay down an array formation, he can't do it either. This is equivalent to incarnating into this world." The cultivators on the Divine Land side also discovered the problem at this moment. They attempted to break through, but they were isolated outside. The spatial turbulence changed, and very soon, even the direction of the cloud forest world could not be determined. The great Zhou dynasty's capital, Tianjing City, in the great hall within the imperial city, Liang Pan and Zhu Hongwu looked at the void tunnel entrance that was gradually disappearing in front of them. Their expressions were gloomy and uncertain. Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou sighed softly. "Including our great Zhou, there are still Shushan, Taishu Temple, and Great Qin, 3 factions that attacked together, but they were all isolated. I can sense that there are experts at the 3rd tier of the primordial spirit realm participating, but they also failed on the verge of success." Slowly, Zhu Hongwu said, "Only by mobilizing the entire dimensional world's power and using the world will to suppress can such an effect be achieved." Liang Pan nodded. "That's right. However, such means are not something that great sage Qiongqi can achieve." Zhu Hongwu said, "Your Majesty is right. Only those with the cultivation of the 3rd tier of the primordial spirit realm or the undying demon soul realm, and with the assistance of special methods, can have such remarkable means." He clenched his fists as if he was holding the life and death of all living things in his hands. Silently, he said, "However, as long as your Majesty is willing, it is not impossible to break through the past. If your Majesty is willing, I am willing to be the vanguard." Slowly, Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou shook his head. "Hongwu, don't be impatient. Now is not the time." Although he said so, this ruler of a country still looked a little disappointed as he sat on the dragon throne. Not only this pair of ruler and minister of the great Zhou dynasty, there were also some people from Taishu Temple, Shushan Sword Sect, and Great Qin dynasty who felt extremely depressed. What they were more concerned about was that the development of the situation had already exceeded their expectations and control. The cloud forest world seemed more like a trap now. As for Yin Mingwei, Shi Zhongyue, Sword Venerable Guanchong, Dao Venerable Xingdou, and the others, they were all trapped inside. In the cloud forest world, Lin Feng's expression was calm as he looked at the cloud forest ancient tree that had suddenly changed. He thought to himself, other than Qiongqi, there are other great demons here. Moreover, they are great demons that are even stronger than great sage Qiongqi. An unparalleled great demon at the 3rd tier of the undying demon soul realm. One of the 10 sages of the demon race, great sage Qiongqi, who is the leader of a race, actually chose to rely on others with a great killing weapon like the 9 glory sky shattering formation in his hands. Lin Feng let out a long breath. Or could it be that there are other demon races that killed their way into the cloud forest world and conquered the Qiongqi demon race? At this moment, Yin Mingwei transmitted her voice over. "The situation has changed unexpectedly. Someone has used the array here to communicate with the will of the entire medium-class world, cutting off my connection with the outside world. With the suppression of the medium-class world's will, even a third-tier primordial spirit realm cultivator can't easily break through. And there must be a great demon at the third tier of the undying demon soul realm here. The situation is dangerous. We need to meet up as soon as possible and tide through the current crisis first. To unify a world's will, even a third-tier primordial spirit realm cultivator can't easily break through. And there must be a great demon at the third tier of the undying demon soul realm here. The situation is dangerous. We need to meet up as soon as possible and tide through the current crisis first. Sword Venerable Guanchong, who had been silent all this while, spoke at this moment. The other party won't waste time. Other than supporting the realm seal, they will definitely send powerhouses to kill us. Yin Mingwei said, "That's right. The situation is unclear now, but the other party definitely won't just have the three great sages of the Qiongqi demon race. There must be other powerhouses." Sure, Zhong US snorted. "If we unite, we'll be strong. If we separate, we'll be weak. Let's meet up first and then plan for the next step." Slowly, Lin Feng said, "The other party will probably have follow-up measures. When the quantity is gathered," the other few primordial spirit realm powerhouses fell silent and then nodded in unison. "That's right. We'll be careful." After cutting off the connection, Lin Feng flew in the forest of flashing white leaves. Suddenly, his heart moved slightly. He stopped and looked to the side. As the light flickered, a figure slowly walked out from the light. Chapter 448. The boundless sea of trees flashing with white light filled the entire cloudy forest world. In the center of the sea of trees, a huge figure was standing silently on a thick branch of an ancient tree. It was an exaggeratedly huge rock. Silently standing there, it was like a mountain not much smaller than the Kuan Peng in his rock form. Different from the azure rock that the Kuan Peng had transformed into, this rock's feathers were all golden, and there were 3 black feathers on its forehead. Its 2 eyes were also pitch black, and its pupils were flashing with demonic golden light, giving it a majestic aura. Although it was a little smaller, this golden-winged rock exuded an astonishing power that seemed to tear the world apart, even more powerful than the ancient Kuan Peng. Standing there, it was like the center of the world. This golden-winged rock was an unparalleled great demon that had achieved the third realm of the indestructible demon soul. In the vast, infinite wasteland, the 10 saints of the demon clan were firmly in the top 3 in terms of strength and influence. He was one of the few demon experts that could challenge the enchantress. He was the leader of the golden-winged rock clan, the Golden Rock Sage. The tree trunk under his feet flashed with white light, which merged with the Golden Rock Sage. It was under the control of the Golden Rock Sage, using the dozen or so cloudy forest trees as a medium, that he temporarily controlled the entire cloudy forest world. At this moment, the Golden Rock Sage had transformed into the will of the cloudy forest world and could dominate this medium-class world for a short time. It was also the Golden Rock Sage who had blocked Liang Pan and the others from the Divine Land. Using the will of the entire medium-class world to suppress it, even experts of the same level as him could not break in for a certain period of time. Not far to the left of Golden Rock Great Sage stood 2 golden-winged rocks that were smaller in size compared to him, and a bird-type demon that was shrouded in a black aura. These 3 bird-type demons were so huge that their wings were enough to blot out the sky and earth. Even with their wings retracted, they were still shockingly huge. On the branch of the ancient tree opposite them, to the right of the Golden Rock Sage, stood a much smaller exotic beast. It had a pair of wings on its back and was covered in the fur of a hedgehog. It looked like both a cow and a tiger. It was a Qiongqi. Although it was much smaller in size, this Qiongqi exuded a strong, evil aura and was extremely terrifying. It was the most powerful demon in the world after the Golden Rock Great Sage. This was naturally the Great Sage Qiongqi. His expression was calm as he looked at the Golden Rock Great Sage and said slowly, "Rock Emperor, How much time do we have? His attitude was not very respectful, but from the way he addressed the Golden Rock Great Sage, it was clear that he had submitted to him. If this scene fell into the eyes of Lin Feng and the others, they would definitely feel that it was unbelievable. Xiongqi was one of the 10 sages of the Demon Clan, along with Golden Rock Great Sage. Although its strength was not as strong, Xiongqi was one of the 4 great ferocious beasts of the ancient times, and the power of its race could not be underestimated. The current Xiongqi Great Sage was an expert in the second realm of the immortal demon soul, but he chose to submit to Golden Rock Great Sage, which was really shocking. Great Sage Xiongqi was in good spirits and had not been injured. He had not been captured by Golden Rock Great Sage and subdued. Instead, he had voluntarily chosen to surrender and had given up his pride as an expert. If it were an ordinary Great Sage of the demon race, some would also choose to submit to a stronger expert. For example, among the 3 bird-type demons standing to the left of the Golden Rock Great Sage, the sun-swallowing condor, whose body was shrouded in black gas, was one such example. There were also demons from other races who had submitted to the enchantress. However, although such demons had an indestructible demon soul, they were usually lone wolves. Just like the itinerant essence soul cultivators in the human cultivation world, they chose to become the protectors of a powerful force. For example, the Great Qin Dynasty's Dao Master Stardo and Dao Master Gambling, the Great Zhou Dynasty's Immortal Riding Cloud, and so on. As for the Great Sage Qiongqi, who was unruly, vicious, and had many people under his command, he dominated a part of the infinite wilderness, and he even had a heaven-defying item like the 9 Glory Sky collapsing array. But in the end, he chose to submit to others. It was simply unique. The Golden Crow Great Sage, who was in a similar situation as him, had always been against the enchantress. Even though he knew that his strength was inferior, he refused to submit. Even when he was trapped in the divine land by the enchantress and fell into a desperate situation, he did not think of begging for mercy. Compared to the human cultivation world, the world of the demon race was more chaotic. Every demon was ambitious and wanted to trample on the other demon races. The Great Sage Qiongqi also knew that he had the 9 Glory Sky collapsing array, and that he would get into trouble because of his wealth. But under normal circumstances, his pride as an expert would not allow him to lower his head and submit to others. However, after he finally chose to submit to the Golden Rock Great Sage for unknown reasons, the Golden Rock Great Sage did not hesitate to take over this hot potato. He did not mind the trouble that it might bring. He even used his means to set up an inescapable net in this medium-class world to entertain the experts who came for the 9 Glory Sky collapsing array. He did not suspect Xiongqi at all and showed great confidence and magnanimity. Hearing the Great Sage Qiongqi's question, the Golden Rock Great Sage's black eyes flashed with a cold and strange demonic light. Don't worry and go hunt. He did not directly answer the Great Sage Xiongqi, but whether it was the Great Sage Qiongqi or the other 3 bird-type demons, they all smiled coldly. Violent, demonic power suddenly burst out and disappeared in the next moment. At the same time, in the forest of white light formed by branches and leaves, there were many terrifying demonic powers bursting out. Lin Feng, who was still far away from the central area, felt the powerful demonic powers surging unscrupulously and frowned inwardly. They are all great demons who have cultivated to the immortal demon soul realm. However, he did not have the time to be distracted at this moment. His gaze was on the light shadow that suddenly appeared at the side. As the light shadow flashed, a barefooted girl dressed in white with her hair hanging loosely behind her slowly walked out. Her face was delicate and beautiful, and her eyes and smile exuded an intoxicating charm. Lin Feng's eyes narrowed slightly. So it's the Great Sage Long Yi. Why? Is it your master the enchantress who controls this world's will now? The person who came was the demoness Long Yi who had contact with Lin Feng before. Her expression was not relaxed as she shook her head and said, Master is still in the infinite wilderness vast land. I came to make arrangement for Master, but now it seems that someone has already gotten here one step ahead of me. Whether it's subduing or forming an alliance, Cheongchi has already merged with the other party and now controls this medium-class world. Sect Master Lin and I are now the other party's prey. Lin Feng stared at her and asked, "Do you know who the other party is?" "Only an expert of the immortal demon soul realm 3rd tier can do such a thing," Long Yi replied silently. "If it's not some ancient demon that is hidden from a world, then only the great sage Golden Rock and the Dragon King of the Purple Sea can do it." Lin Feng nodded. These two demons were extremely famous. Not to mention the infinite wilderness vast land of the demon race. Even in the divine land of the human race, they were also well known. The great sage Golden Rock was the leader of the golden-winged rock race, an expert of the immortal demon soul realm 3rd tier. Both of them were strong contenders for the position of the demon race's Saint Emperor, like the Enchantress. The Dragon King of the Purple Sea was an expert of the dragon race. He was also a great demon that had cultivated the immortal demon soul realm 3rd tier. The dragon race was different from other demon races. Only those who had cultivated the immortal demon soul could be called Dragon King. They were not like other demon races who could be called kings after forming a demon soul. Correspondingly, the dragon race did not use the title Great Sage. Compared to the Enchantress and the Great Sage Golden Rock, the Dragon King of the Purple Sea was much more low-key. But just because he was low-key didn't mean that others would look down on him. This demon, along with the Heavenly Enchantress and the Golden Rock, had always been considered the top 3 of the 10 sages of the demon race. Long Yi continued, "The Dragon King of the Purple Sea has always been low-key. The most likely is still the Great Sage Golden Rock." She said softly, "This demon's power has been expanding very quickly in recent years. He can almost be called the king of the bird race. Other than the phoenix, the 3-legged golden crow, and a few other bird race demons, almost all the bird race experts and races in the infinite wilderness vastland have been unified by him." Lin Feng said indifferently, "Not just birds, now even beasts of the land are counted." Long Yi smiled. "Yes, but I don't know if Cheongqi was captured by him, or if the entire Cheongqi race simply surrendered to him. If it's the former, then it's fine. The 9 glory sky shattering formation diagram might not have already fallen into his hands. But if it's the latter, then the situation is very troublesome." Lin Feng looked at Long Yi and suddenly asked, "Among the demons that came in with you, how many great sage level experts were there?" "Including me, 3. Long Yi's gaze flashed slightly, and she looked towards Lin Feng. Sect leader Lin's words seemed to have another meaning. Long Yi first straightforwardly answered Lin Feng's question. Then she asked in return, "How many primordial spirit cultivators of the human race that entered this dimensional world with sect leader Lin?" Lin Feng said indifferently, "Apart from me, there are 4 more." Long Yi murmured to herself, "That's good. There aren't enough." Lin Feng's pupils contracted slightly. Just as he was about to ask something, his heart suddenly moved slightly, and he rapidly retreated. A dark red bloody light suddenly shot out from beneath his feet, a cold and ruthless aura of power spreading in all directions. It practically brushed past Lin Feng, shattering many branches of the forest of white light. These ancient tree branches that flickered with white light were now completely one with this dimensional world. Attacking them was equivalent to attacking this world, and the defensive power of the branches was also extremely strong. It was difficult to destroy easily, but now it was shattered by the bloody light. Lin Feng looked at those shattered white light, continuously twisting, the cracks filled with terrifying spatial turbulence. That bloody light just now did not simply shatter the branches of the ancient tree, but it was equivalent to destroying a part of the void. Lin Feng raised his eyes and looked over. The first thing that entered his eyes was a pair of dark red, abnormally terrifying cold eyes, like 2 abysses filled with blood. The owner of those blood-red eyes was impressively and incomparably huge black wolf, like a mountain range. The huge wolf walked out from the depths of the forest of white light. With each step it took, its body became a bit smaller until its front paws left the ground and it stood up like a human. His entire person also gradually transformed into a human form, turning into a tall man wearing a wolfskin cloak, revealing his sturdy chest. Terrifying demonic power fluctuations and majestic chi and blood spread out, making people not dare to look directly at him. It was impressively a great sage of the demon race that had already cultivated to the second realm of the indestructible demon soul. Lin Feng's expression was indifferent, turning his head to look at Long Yi, who looked as if nothing had happened. Looks like the conversation is going to end here. The white-clothed girl smiled at Lin Feng and spread her hands, saying, "Don't look at me, sect leader Lin. I don't have the final say in entering this time." She pointed at the tall man beside her and said with a smile, "This is my martial uncle, Heavenly Wolf Great Sage." Chapter 449. In human form. The Heavenly Wolf Great Sage was a tall man over 2 meters tall, wearing a black wolf skin cloak. His jet black hair draped over his back, his face was rough, and his eyes were blood red, like 2 deep pools filled with blood, flickering with a cold and cruel light. He looked coldly at Lin Feng, saying, This is the Lin Feng you mentioned before?" Long Yi smiled. "Yes, martial uncle." Was the Golden Crow Great Sage suppressed by this person? At this time, an old woman slowly walked out from behind the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, silently looking at Lin Feng. Long Yi smiled. "Yes, Aunt, that old Golden Crow was defeated by him." Lin Feng looked at the old woman. Her figure was stooped, she wore ochre clothes, her expression was calm, and her facial features looked ordinary. Sensing the fluctuations of her demonic power, he discovered that she was also a great demon that had cultivated an indestructible demonic soul and had taken human form. Her cultivation was not as high as the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and should be at the first level of the indestructible demonic soul realm. Her killing intent was not heavy, and she seemed to be a demon of plants like Long Yi. But looking at this old woman, Lin Feng felt that there was something wrong with her. Because she was in the sea of white trees, this old woman seemed to be even more relaxed than the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage and Long Yi. In reality, after the cloud forest trees and the dimensional realm merged and turned into the sea of white trees, the people inside, whether it was humans like Lin Feng and Yin Mingyue, or demons like Long Yi and the Heavenly Wolf Great Sage, would all be restrained a lot. On one hand, they had to resist the suppression of the sea of white trees. On the other hand, they couldn't fight too fiercely. Otherwise, it would be very easy for the Golden Rock Great Sage, who controlled the sea of trees, to lock onto their specific position. Grasping the severity of this was a rather challenging matter, and would imperceptibly involve a lot of the energy of Lin Feng and the others. But according to Lin Feng's current observation, the old woman next to Long Yi seemed quite relaxed in the sea of trees. She was because she had become a demon of plants, while Long Yi was also the root of the jade tree. The two were both at the first level of the indestructible demonic soul realm, but Long Yi was far less relaxed. The Heavenly Wolf Great Sage stared at Lin Feng and snorted. If Senior Sister hadn't injured that old Golden Crow first, he probably wouldn't have the ability to suppress it. The Heavenly Wolf Great Sage said, "Celestial Wolf, save some strength. The Golden Rock subordinates will arrive soon. I'm very interested in that jade capital mountain of his. Little Yi accidentally lost it in the past, so I'll help you retrieve it today." Celestial Wolf Great Sage grinned, a cold glint flashing across his snow-white teeth. The Golden Rock needs someone alive to make up the numbers. I'll kill this guy here first to further ensure that the Golden Rock doesn't have enough people. Hearing this, Lin Feng was not annoyed. Instead, he revealed an interested expression. "Oh, it seems like you know a lot about the Golden Rock Sage." Long Ye's soliloquy had revealed some information. Now, after listening to Celestial Wolf Sage's words, It was obvious that they were aware of some of Golden Rock Sage's plans. Heavenly Wolf Great Saint smiled cruelly, and suddenly his two blood-red pupils shone with layers of light and shadow. It was as if in a boundless sea of blood, white bones were piled up into a mountain, and a giant black wolf was howling endlessly at the top of the mountain. Violent killing intent, and the smell of blood emanated from his body. He was incomparably violent and bloodthirsty. Lin Feng had never seen such a ferocious and brutal demon before. Honorable Swordsman Guan Chong was a sword cultivator who killed decisively. Honorable Azura Hua Xiao practiced the Azura tactics that focused on killing. Golden Crow Great Saint was a great demon at the same level as this demon, an immortal demon soul second tier. But their smell of blood was incomparable to that of the celestial wolf sage in front of him. This demon was definitely the one with the most blood on his hands among all the experts that Lin Feng had come into contact with. He was a super butcher who had taken the most lives. Actually, there was no need for Long Yi to introduce him. Lin Feng had already guessed his identity the moment he saw Celestial Wolf Sage. When he stood next to Long Yi, he was even more certain. Killing Prison Heavenly Wolf, also known as Celestial Wolf Sage, was the #1 general and gold medal fighter under the Enchantress. He had the most powerful double-flowered rod, and had made great contributions to the Enchantress's conquest of Infinite Wasteland. He was famous for his military prowess. Compared to the mysterious Enchantress, many people were more familiar with this wolf. It was rumored that this demon was the Enchantress's junior brother. Like the Enchantress and Long Yi, he cultivated the demon race's top secret technique, the Book of Primordial Chaos Demon. Coupled with his extraordinary talent, he was extremely powerful. Although he was only at the second level of the indestructible demon soul realm, there were few who could match him in Infinite Wasteland. It was almost publicly acknowledged by the entire demon world that if he hadn't always loyally followed the Enchantress, and had instead chosen to fight on his own, the title of the demon race's 10 sages would most likely have been squeezed out. Even unparalleled great demons like the Golden Crow Sage and Xiongqi Sage, who were ranked among the demon race's 10 sages, might not be able to gain the upper hand when facing the Celestial Wolf Sage. There were even rumors that the Golden Crow Sage had once been defeated by him, and only did not suffer a great loss because of the bird-type demon race's speed advantage. Although this information was only a rumor, whether it was true or false, it indirectly proved this wolf demon's valiant strength. 3 sword strikes should be enough, right? Lin Feng calculated in his heart. Although the Celestial Wolf Sage hadn't revealed his true form, and just his human form brought him an even greater sense of oppression than Sword Venerable Guan Chong, his expression was as calm as ever. Right at this moment, the branches and leaves of the tree that flickered with white light around them suddenly began to shake violently, and many ripple-like patterns appeared. The expressions of Lin Feng, Long Yi, the Celestial Wolf Sage, and the ochre-clothed old lady all shifted slightly. They immediately felt that within each ripple, there was an extremely terrifying demonic aura surging, and it was about to emerge from the ripples. I'll leave that Jade Capital Mountain with you for now. The Celestial Wolf Sage looked at Lin Feng and grinned, then turned his head and said to Long Yi and the ochre-clothed old lady, "Let's go." Long Yi smiled lightly and waved her hand at Lin Feng. "Sec Leader Lin, we can only chat next time." Without the slightest hesitation, they immediately flashed away. Looking at those ripples, he immediately understood that the current cloudy forest realm, after being controlled by the Golden Rock Great Sage, was like a huge magic array. Through the cloudy forest trees, which were connected by the spiritual chi, he could quickly transport the demon experts under his command to any location in the medium-class world. There were more than 10 ripples flashing together in front of them, which meant that more than 10 demon race great sages were about to descend here. Although the Celestial Wolf Sage was bloodthirsty and crazy, arrogant and domineering, it didn't mean that he was muddle-headed. He had no interest in being ganged up on. Lin Feng also flew back at the same time. Under the suppression of this dimensional realm, Yin Mingyue, Long Yi, the celestial wolf sage, and the others all faced the same problem, which was that their movements were greatly restricted. Although they could still break through the void, they would be compressed by the world power of the cloud forest world, to the extent that they couldn't fly at full speed. The spatial boundary power of the cloud forest world would also interfere with their escape techniques, making them unable to reach the predetermined location. This made it very difficult for Lin Feng and the others to meet up after they scattered, while Qiongqi Great Sage and the others who were in pursuit could easily gather superior forces to besiege and annihilate them with the help of the world power. Just like real beasts, separating lone prey and then hunting. Just as he left the place, Lin Feng immediately felt more than 10 extremely powerful demonic auras spread out behind him, and then they split into two directions, most of them chasing Long Yi and the others, while there were 3 other great demons chasing after Lin Feng. 3 demon race great sages who achieved the immortal demon soul realm. A Qiongqi with a pair of wings on its back that looked like both a bull and a tiger, a huge golden winged roc, and a bird-type great demon sun swallowing eagle that was surrounded by black fog from head to toe. Among the 3 demon race great sages, 2 were bird-type, and their flying speed was extremely fast. The remaining Qiongqi's speed wasn't slow either, and they chased after Lin Feng together. Lin Feng's divine soul fused with Jade Capital Mountain, and the burden was huge. His own magic power circulation was sluggish, and his flying speed was greatly reduced to begin with. At this moment, being suppressed and bound by the Cloud Forest World's world power, his speed was even slower. Compared to the 3 demon race great sages, he was simply like a snail crawling. In the blink of an eye, he was about to be caught up. Oh no, they're going to catch up. Not a chance. Lin Feng curled his lips, lightly tapping his glabella with his finger. The gate of heaven opened wide above his head. Clear light surged, and vast purple qi gushed out, enveloping his entire person. Above Lin Feng's head, Jade Capital Mountain and the profound heaven treasure tree slowly rose, purple qi enveloping the surroundings. Jade Capital Mountain didn't return to its original size, and it just floated above Lin Feng's head. The branches and leaves of the profound heaven treasure tree on the mountain swayed, emitting balls of 7-colored treasure light. The 7-colored treasure light opened a path and instantly tore through the void. It flew with Lin Feng and instantly disappeared without a trace. The 3 demon race great sages, who had already caught up to Lin Feng, revealed looks of surprise. In their eyes, Lin Feng's flying speed was extremely slow, as if he was only at the Yuanying stage. But just as they were about to catch up to Lin Feng, clear light surged above Lin Feng's head. His body was suddenly enveloped by purple qi, and he disappeared without a trace the next moment. The golden-winged roc was still somewhat indignant. Their race was the fastest in the world, even faster than other bird species demons like the Kuan Peng and the sun-devouring condor. However, when it used its speed to fly through the void, it still couldn't catch up to Lin Feng. Qiongqi said in a deep voice, "How can he still be so fast under the suppression of the world power? Who is this person?" The sun-devouring condor said gloomily, "Perhaps he borrowed some treasure. If he relied on his own cultivation level, this person must be a 3rd-level essence soul realm human expert. If that's the case, he will be discovered by Emperor Rock the moment he enters this dimensional realm. In any case, this person's strength has exceeded our expectations. We have to report this to Emperor Rock." As the golden-winged roc spoke, the golden roc great sage's voice sounded from the sea of trees. It came from all directions and filled the entire world as if the world was speaking. "I already know about this matter. Just continue." The 3 demon race great sages responded in unison. Qiongqi tilted his head slightly and received a voice transmission from his clansman. He said, "That monk has lured his sect's elders here. Emperor Rock has opened the realm and let him in. Let's deal with him first." The golden-winged roc and the sun-devouring condor nodded in unison. The white light beneath their feet flickered as they sank into the ripples and disappeared. Lin Feng's control over Mount Yujing, the cyclic purple qi, and the mystic heavenly treasure tree were getting better and better. He used the mystic heavenly treasure tree to tear through space-time and temporarily escape the pursuit of the three great demons. He didn't have the time to tangle with them. Breaking the Golden Rock Great Sage's control over the Cloud Forest realm was the key to resolving the problem. The 9 glory sky crumbling array diagram and the 10-odd Cloud Forest trees were the truly valuable items. Apart from that, for Lin Feng, taking back that Buddhist Sarira along the way is also a pretty good harvest. As he was calculating, the system's notification suddenly sounded in Lin Feng's ears again. The lost relics of the Great Thunderclap Monastery have been discovered near the host. Lin Feng was immediately amused. My luck today isn't bad. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.